Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. Welcome back to our live show on Saturday that we do, where we do live readings. This evening we're going to be doing live astrology. Thank you for joining me. Do me a favor, give me a thumbs up, and sharing is caring. So if you want to share this with other people who may want to get a reading, let them know, send them a link. Those of you guys who are new to my channel, welcome. I'm a Western and evolutionary astrologer. I factor in clairvoyant and also tarot work into my readings and like to kind of do lots of like predictive work. So we're going to look at transits in a lot of these readings this evening. If you have questions about either a natal placement in your chart, or if you have questions about transits and how it may play out for you, certain areas of your life, things like that, do consider getting a reading. All readings are by donation only. Now, this is the way that it's going to work. I know I sound like a broken record, but I have to say this a couple times because we're still kind of getting people in the flow of doing this in a timely fashion. So to be able to get everybody's readings in and to do it as quick as we can, please follow this particular method, okay? Scan the QR code right next to me. You can scan that and you're gonna be able to get a little bit of insight as to how to pay me. It's gonna take you directly into my PayPal. It is gonna be $40 for any question you have about a natal chart. Please keep it to one question per person. If you're asking more than one question, I'm gonna pick one and I'm gonna answer it. Two is it's $40 for that one question, or if you have questions about Synastry, it's $65. In the memo, please put your name, your date of birth, the exact year, time, date, location, all of that stuff. Please spell the month out for me. I appreciate you guys putting it in the chat, but the problem is when you put it in the chat, it takes me a very long time to scroll through it, and then everybody ends up waiting. So if you don't want me to skip you, if you want to ensure that you get a reading, when you make the PayPal, all of this information needs to be in it. If it's not, when I call your name and let you know that you're coming up, please make sure that you have that information available along with what you want me to take a look at. I would prefer not for people to be like, oh, just give me a general reading. Let me know what to look at or what questions you have just to make this a little bit easier. I appreciate that. It's just these get longer and longer because we have more people. We can definitely get more readings in if we kind of do this a little bit easier. Big thank you and a shout out to all my level 2 and level 3 subscribers and my members. Those of you guys who are not aware, I have memberships now, level 1, 2, and 3. So if you really like my channel, if you like my horoscopes, if you like my weekly show, if you like my new and my full moon videos, do consider becoming a member. It is going to help make it possible for me to create more content. We're putting out 4 videos a week right now with the goal to be able to do more educational stuff. So if that's something you're interested in, do consider donating or becoming a member. So big thank you to Deanna, Emma, Ezekiel, Susan, Catherine, Paula, Miss Fogel, Jackie, Anjali, Hera, Nancy, Phoenix, Jessica, and Susan Wexler. Thanks, y'all. And obviously, if you are a level 3 subscriber or member, excuse me, you are going to be one of the first people who gets readings. So part of the level 3 membership is you're going to get a reading once a month during one of my live shows. We alternate between tarot and astrology, so you can take your pick, whatever you want each month. I see we've got a couple people who are already in here. Let me scroll up. For some reason, I can't quite see. So give me a second. I'm going to reshuffle my screen. Something about this pinned message makes it really difficult for me to read everything. Here we go. So whoever it was, the first person, I can't quite see what you're putting. I apologize. I got to remove this pinned comment because I can't see what they're asking. So I'm going to unpin it. There we go. So we've got Anjali. Okay, I couldn't see who it was. So we've got Anjali and Emma. You guys are level 3 who want your readings. Awesome. And those of you guys who have already made your donation, I've got you. Appreciate you. I know we've got Michelle, Aileen, Amy, and also I see you, Heart of Justice. Thank you for joining, Victoria. It's nice to see you. So I've got you. You guys are going to be next in the queue. I'm going to take a look at the first couple people first. So Anjali says, hey, in case I can't make it to the live, do you have time to do my lunar return for the month? I can do that. Let me see. Do I have you in here? Give me just a second. Maybe I saved you. March 17, 1987. Oh, no, wait. Yeah, 1987. Okay, one of you is 87, one is 76. Yeah. So, Anjali, we can definitely do your lunar return for Chicago. We'll do that. Emma, Hey Candace, I just got my monthly can I get my monthly reading? General astro for what's coming up the next few weeks. We can do that for you too. So let me see if I have you, Emma. Everybody else I've put in, but one thing I will say is that for Michelle, let me know if you're in here. I need to get your information. So I know you sent an email being like, how does it work? I thought you sent your info. So I need to have your full date of birth, your time, and your location. Please send that to me so that way I can get that in for you guys as well. If you guys send me a PayPal, let me know if your name differs on PayPal versus on YouTube, because sometimes you guys have different names. Just because sometimes we'll have upwards of 30, 40 people in the chat at one time, so it's a lot. There's Michelle. Okay, cool. Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate it. If you do Synastry, yes, ideally I have both. If you can give me both. If you only have your birth information and their birthday, I can look at that, but it's not going to be as specific, okay? I'm going to try to limit readings no more than 10 minutes per person just so we can get everybody in. And obviously full moon astrology readings, full moon and Sag readings, we're having this full moon that's going to be here in a couple days, the 13th going into the 14th. If you guys haven't already seen the full moon in Sagittarius video, check it out. I do predictions for each and every one of the 12 signs. Listen to your rising sign, but if you happen to be like somebody who is a Sagittarius, sun, moon, and rising, or if you've got placements around 23 degrees of Sag, it can be a lot more active for you over the next couple of days. So definitely a good time to get a reading. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and get started. And I'll pull Anjali's info. Now, Anjali was asking about doing a lunar return. And basically we take a look at like what's happening for her for the month ahead. And it's going to be based off of the city that she's in now. And it looks like your lunar return was yesterday, so good timing. Cool. All right, Anjali, so this is going to be your lunar return for the month ahead. It'll be about June 10th for about 28 days, so it'll be good for about 3 weeks. So in this lunar return, we have the Pisces rising and the moon is in the 7th. So we're both going to look at aspects, not only between the moon, but also between Neptune. And one of the biggest things that kind of catches my eye is just that you've got Neptune on the ascendant, you've got the moon in the 7th. So that's creating like a quincunx to one another. So they're trying to kind of reconcile with each other. Turn some of my lights down here. That way I'm not glowing in your guys' face. There we go. So one thing that I would say is just looking at this, when you have an inconjunct, okay, so Pisces and Libra create an inconjunct, and you see this between Pisces and Leo as well. They are trying to bring out like the most significant traits in each other, right? So Moon in Libra in the 7th house wants to partner, wants to have a lot of activity going around in regards to connecting with people. It can be a month where there's just more of an emphasis on relating and how you relate and spending time with others. But the moon is in that uncomfortable angle to Neptune, which is saying like you may fluctuate and go back and forth between feeling like you want time with somebody else and then you want time alone, or that when you are alone, you're yearning for the connection to another person. Now, I'm really liking the fact that in this lunar return chart, you also have the moon that's in a trine to Saturn. And it's also making a trine to the sun. So just like the last couple of days, like the feeling of communicating to be able to maybe better like relate to others, you know, the sun being in the 3rd house and a trine to the moon is like, if you can't be with somebody else, communicating, sending an email, text message, or phone call, being like, hey, I miss you. Like, let's make plans, let's get together. I can't right now, but can we do this later down the line? With the moon trine Saturn also, it's kind of telling me that there is an opportunity to communicate and express your feelings better with other people, and maybe explaining to people that you're not avoiding them, that you're just really busy, that maybe you need a little bit of like more rest and relaxation, and that when you have freedom, you'll be able to kind of connect with them a little bit more, right? So the other thing is then we look at Neptune, which is the ruler of the ascendant, and Pisces rising is about kind of feeling like when it's the right time to do something. You might find that there is more this month in particular, like adjustments in your schedule, in your sleep schedule, in how you're eating, your body energy fluctuations, might kind of come about. And there can definitely be a sense of you feeling like I said, when you're alone, you want to be with other people. When you're with other people, you're like, I want to be alone. So there can be this feeling of not being able to fully be comfortable, I guess I would say, with some of the aspects that are going on between you and your relationships this month. I'm also watching Neptune. It's building into a square with the sun. And by whole sign perspective, the sun is in a square to Neptune. So it's also this feeling of like, a lot more activity going on that involves you being emotionally present, maybe being home, being more so with your family. That's something else that can be going on. But for the most part, I'm really liking the air trine that you're getting between the moon, Saturn, and the sun. I feel like that's giving you the opportunity when you do need time to hide out to just communicate. So when in doubt, communicate, let people know how you're feeling. The other thing I would say is that there is a semi-sextile going on between the moon and the south node. So there can be this feeling of like needing to clear the air with romantic partners, or needing to clear the air with business partners, especially anything in relation to whether or not you feel secure. So this can be conversations that you have with other people being like, hey, are we good? It can also be conversations that you have with clients or people that you're working with that's like, hey, am I going to get paid? Things about needing to touch base about security, emotional security, financial security. That's another way that this can play out. Now, because you're a Libra moon, you're not having the exact square any longer, but you are somebody, at least until we get Pluto out of the later degrees of Capricorn, that feels the pinch that's going on whenever you have a lunar return, because the moon is in a square to Pluto. Now that's separating, right? Because the moon's at 21, Pluto's at 28. But I'm watching like Mars and Chiron building into an opposition with your moon as well. And so I would take that into consideration. It's about a 6-degree opposition. Moon opposed Chiron is like feeling the pain of having to go your own way versus wanting to partner with other people. So I'm wondering if there's like this sense of you being more assertive this month, maybe having to take space from certain individuals who you very well want to see, but you're like, I need to focus on other things right now. Maybe we aren't having the same alignment when it comes to our goals, because I'm looking at the moon square Pluto and Mars in opposition to the moon. What we call this is a cardinal T-square. So the moon is actually activating this. Now it can be also potential squabbles, okay, that you can have with friends, about whether or not you're showing up in relationship. Friends with Pluto in the 11th can be like, hey, you want to go and do something, let's get together. And you're like, I can't, I'm busy, I've got stuff going on. And then they see that you're hanging out with, a secret someone. And they're like, why are you hanging out with him? You want to hang out with me? There can be some friction there with like, people kind of feeling as if you're putting more emphasis in relationships this month. I would watch over the next week or two, because Mars is going to continue to come into this opposition with your moon, and it can bring up this emotional kind of tension. And even though it's in Aries, it's still in your first house, right? So it's basically saying there's going to be a lot of friction in terms of how you're asserting yourself with other people. And you just want to watch for being a little too overly eager or a little too overly aggressive. That can be something else that can come up. You can be a little passive aggressive with that Pisces rising, Mars in the first, stuff like that. Besides that, though, like I said, the air signs I think are the air trines are what's gonna be your best friend this month. And when you feel like spending time with somebody, reach out and communicate. When you're feeling overwhelmed or smothered, or that you need time alone, or that you'd rather just stay home and rest, or reorganize your space, or what have you, relationships can function a little bit better this month via text message, phone communication, FaceTime, Zoom, things like that. So if you are feeling like you've got a lot of stuff that you need to get done, but you still want to partner with people without moon in the 7th house this month, try to use technology in ways to be able to communicate. And to me, it looks like you might be doing it more at nighttime, because you've got Saturn that's hanging out in the 12th house. So it might be at the end of your day, right? And you'll, text them and be like, if I get time, I'll call you, and maybe we can FaceTime at the end of the week type of thing. So you're not losing that ability to really kind of focus on partnering with other people. Let me know how that happens, because from what I've seen, whenever there is a moon quincunx Neptune, it's there's this feeling of not quite feeling pleased either way. unfortunately. And that, like I said, when you're with people, you're like, oh, this is too much. I'm feeling drained. And then when you're alone, you're like, I really want a partner. You know, I wish I could have somebody who could come over and we could hang out. So you're going to kind of feel it go both ways. Let me know how that works out for you, Anjali. Hopefully that is helpful for you. Thank you to those of you guys who are just tuning in and you're making donations for readings. I appreciate it. We're getting to everybody in the order that they sent it. Let me go ahead and now pick up, hey Kayla, how's it going? Emma. So let me put Emma's info in. And we're gonna do a solar return for Emma too, or excuse me, a lunar return. Okay. Emma, can you let me know, is the city that you're living in the same as your birth city? Because I see that you're giving me Victoria, Australia, but I want to know what city you were born in versus what city you're living in. Could you let me know? March 18th, 76. And that's at 11:50 p.m. You're leaving, okay, perfect, thank you. So is your lunar return as we speak? All right. Okay, so that's giving you a lunar return. And that is going to be a Capricorn rising 5 degrees. Your sun in Gemini in the 6th. You have some of the same squares. And then you've also got your moon in Scorpio. Your natal moon at 2 degrees. Just confirming, just want to make sure because I haven't done your lunar return, I don't think. I think my eyes, I mean, there's a lot going on here. We're going to talk a little bit about Saturn. We're going to talk about the moon in general. But the moon is conjunct the midheaven in this chart. So the lunar return, having the moon on an angle, is putting an emphasis on how you're feeling about your career, how you're feeling about the work that you're doing. It can be definitely either much more of a public month where there's just a lot more of you putting yourself out there or putting your emotional self out there, getting out of your comfort zone. And the moon in this chart is actually the ruler of the 7th. So I'm wondering if this is a lot about focusing on who you're partnering with publicly, romantically, or business-wise. It could be one of the two. It really depends. One thing I would say is with the moon conjunct the MC, though, that tells me that there is this theme of your feelings kind of fluctuating a lot when it comes to work or the work that you can get done, okay? So I don't know if you're feeling that. It can tell me that you need to feel more emotionally fulfilled in the work that you're doing this month. I'm looking at the moon that's also in a square to Pluto. So anybody who's got their moon in either a very late degree cardinal sign or a very early degree fixed sign, you are beginning to start feeling Pluto coming into a square with your natal moon. I don't know if you're aware of that, but that's going to play a big role in what's going to be happening for you over the next year or two as you experience that square. But moon in the midheaven square Pluto is how am I changing the work that I'm doing out in the world, because the moon moves faster than any other sign. That's where the most action is going to be. With the square to Pluto is changing the way that you emotionally respond to people, maybe at work, the way that you respond to bosses or coworkers, or just changing and transforming Pluto, the way that you look at your career and how you identify out in the world. So I would watch that. That's going to be a theme for the next month. The moon is also coming into a trine with Saturn. It's about, 8 degrees, but it's still there. That trine is telling me that there is some sense of you really looking at your career or your responsibility or your work life going, I need to do something that's going to make me feel emotionally stable, or I need to feel more emotionally stable about how I'm making money. So I think with Saturn being the ruler of the chart and Saturn's retrograde and it's in a trine to the moon is telling me just before your lunar return. So I imagine it's been like maybe like the last like 3 or 4 days, there's been this sense of like focusing on like, well, how can I, make more in terms of resources, or how can I change the way that I'm feeling when it comes to being in control of my money or my resources, my security. So there is some flavor of that that's kind of coming into this. Now Saturn also, if we just look at it as Saturn being the ruler of this chart, Saturn sits retrograde at 25 degrees in the second, which means you are reviewing and looking over what your values are, how you're spending money, how much money you're spending on food, how much money you're spending on going out and doing things with friends because it's an Aquarius. And Saturn is building into a square with the South Node in the 10th house and the North Node in the 4th house. Tell me, are you going through the motions of like really reevaluating how much you're spending on your cost of living, how much money is going into rent if you're renting, whether or not you're playing around with or open to the idea of being like, well, should I be like saving more money so I could buy something or invest in something? I don't know if that's coming up for you, but that's kind of what the square reads like for me. Anybody who's got a Scorpio moon, I would say pay very close attention to what's happening for the next couple days. Not even so much the full moon. I'm more thinking like the next 24 hours when the moon moves deeper into Scorpio and it opposes Venus and Uranus like tomorrow, and then it's going to conjunct the South Node and square Saturn. That's right before the full moon, right, guys? So it's saying that there is some emotional breakdown, right? South Node, Moon, Scorpio, releasing, detoxifying, purging, negative ways of thinking, negative ways of being. It could be that there's more action going on in the workspace where you're going back and forth with like how much money you're making or budgeting at work, or there can be, somebody coming in saying like, hey, we're making adjustments and things like that. We're scaling back on stuff, right? Because the moon is other people. Okay, cool. So I'm certainly reevaluating everything from values to work to managing house finances. So that is the month ahead. When you feel the pinch in about 24 hours, it'll be fine, okay? You want to pay attention, and this is how you guys can really use astrology to make astrology work for you. Even though I know it's going to play a different role in your transits, in my mind, I'm thinking about when the moon goes through Aquarius and it conjuncts Saturn, and then that's like the restriction that you're going to make. I'll give you the date for this. So when the moon comes into conjunction with Saturn, so this is for everybody, but it's really applying to Emma's reading. Moon will conjunct Saturn on June 17th, and that will be in Aquarius. And that's going to be this hard realization of some kind of like cutback we need to make. Part of it's because the moon will conjunct Saturn, so it's going to square your natal moon by sign. The other part of it is that day is also when Venus in Taurus is coming into a square with Saturn. So what this full moon is going to teach everybody, or this lunation, is like, this doesn't feel good. I need to make this shift, right? Even today's Venus conjunct Uranus. So there's some liberation of like what it means to feel good and like what it is that we need to feel good and what we suddenly change or what we suddenly shift about our values. And then it'll touch on the North Node of the next couple days where we're like, yes, resources, security, stability. And then it'll square Saturn this day, right? Venus will square Saturn this day on the 17th and the 18th. And we're going to go, oh, that's the cutback I have to make. So I look at this and go, okay, it's like the cutback that you're going to make is like, am I spending too much on food? How can I scale back a little bit? How can I maybe make lunches from home, make dinner from home, be budgeting when it comes to shopping, like these kinds of things, because it's squaring all the planets that you have in the 4th house. So there is some kind of cut back that you're going to make. And because we see planets conjuncting the North Node and squaring Saturn, everybody's going to feel this, okay? It's not like literally globally. So it'll materialize as like hearing stuff in the headlines about, oh, we're going to have delays of these products and we're going to be behind on, being able to ship and receive this, that, and the other. And you're going to hear some kind of dicey economic stuff in the world. So everybody's feeling the pinch. For you, it's the money that you spend. And for you this month, it's also reflecting on, I need to be the one who's making the changes. I need to feel good about how I'm spending my money and my resources, and I'm not going to allow what I do or do not possess determine my security or determine my worth, right? Saturn square the nodes from the 2nd through the 4th going into the 5th. Amber says, I've been so emotional last few days. Yeah, the build up to the full moon, actually, it's like people underestimate like how intense it is. And I'm not discrediting other astrologers who are on YouTube. Like everybody has their own perspective. Certainly, like I'm going to give a more between the eyes kind of reading with what I'm seeing in the astrology nowadays. Same way when I do readings for you guys, same way when I do one-on-one sessions. This full moon is conjunct the galactic center by a couple degrees, and it's in a square to Neptune. The galactic center is a black hole, right? It's in the sign of Sagittarius. It's about like where we have connection to consciousness, but it can consume everything as well. So this can feel for a lot of people, this full moon is like, oh my gosh, like the story is changing. Like I need to suck or remove something out of my life. And the midpoints are very interesting. Pluto and Neptune are on 2 very important midpoints. So if you haven't seen that video, go watch it, because I talk about how this is kind of the cosmic clearing that's going on. And then it's going to square Neptune, which is going to dissolve something. So actually, you know, Jupiter is kind of significant in this sense because, you know, Jupiter is the ruler of the chart. It's in Aries, so it's helping us move along. But Neptune is like the secret kind of star and of this particular full moon. And you're going to see wherever Neptune is in your chart, it's going to dissolve something. What I'm getting at is, for you, Emma, is that I personally feel like it's not just making these cutbacks. It's also Saturn, which is in a trine to the sun, right? So Saturn in a trine to the sun is also saying, like, how can I get organized? How can I clear things out? How can I cut back? How do these cutbacks and changes in my schedule and my routine make me feel emotionally? Because the sun is the ruler of the 8th house. So it's definitely going to be, I think, a month where you're feeling the pinch, okay? But it's finding ways to be able to focus on feeling secure without feeling like you need to have all of the things. And now that Saturn is retrograding, you're going to have a little bit of time to kind of work through that. So hopefully that's helpful. I think it's really positive. I think the moon conjunct the midheaven is also giving you an opportunity to make changes if you need to in terms of either your outlook, what you're doing work-wise, or what have you, to be able to facilitate more of that security. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Thank you. What's up, Patrick? Nice to see you. Yeah, this moon cycle is something else, y'all. I have a ton of planets in Capricorn and a ton of planets in Scorpio, like all of my planets. So a lot of my midpoints are always in Sagittarius. So when like the eclipses were happening in Sagittarius, when the node was going through, the south node was going through Sagittarius, when we have full moons in Sagittarius, it has huge impacts on me. So those of you guys who are like, oh my God, what's happening? I feel you on that. There's definitely some stuff going on. All right, Emma, thank you. Good luck. Thank you to everybody who is waiting. I know we got a couple people in line. Thanks for your patience. All right, so now we're going to go with Michelle. Then we have Aileen, Amy. We've got Victoria, Lynn, Samantha, Miranda, Angela, and Savika Kumar. Can you tell me if I'm pronouncing your name correctly? I don't want to botch your name. That's one of my big pet peeves. All right, so let me go ahead and put in Michelle's info. And that was 9/18/68. And that was at 3:05 p.m. Portland, Maine. That's one of my favorite cities. The food there is so good. All right, 3:05 p.m. Portland, Maine. There we go. Wrong Portland. We got it. All right. So your question was, what do I see in terms of career? So you got a Cap rising, 9 degrees. Your sun is in Virgo. Wow, look at that 8th house stellium, huh? My. You're a Virgo, but you're like an honorary Scorpio almost with that Sun Pluto in the 8th house. So your career is going to be ruled for you by either Pluto or Mars, depending on how you look at it. If we were to go by traditional, like whole sign, we could say Venus as well. The good news is that you've got Saturn trine Venus, which I think is really kind of building that up and making it possible for you to go deeper into making some career moves. But I'm Placidus. I'm a Placidus girl because this is what's going to be helpful for timing. So I'm looking at the South Node moving through your 10th house, right? And there's eclipses that have been happening there. You actually just recently had an eclipse that was there around mid-May. Now that eclipse was in your 10th house by Placidus standards, and it squared Saturn in your 2nd. So I'm wondering, was there a cutback at work? Did a job end? Did you have to cut something? Did you feel like you weren't making enough money doing something? Or has this been feeling like a bit of a crunch financially and like trying to find something that's going to be able to pay the bills? I don't know if you want to expand on that, but I'm also looking at the fact that Neptune has been in opposition to your Pluto for a little while, which can make you feel like you're not entirely sure what it is that you want to be doing for work. You're a little lost when it comes to the direction that you're going in terms of how you would like to bring money in or what feels fulfilling or what feels like it's going to stick. That can be confusing with Neptune in opposition to your 10th house lord. Now Neptune is moving into an opposition and it's opposing your sun. So now it's a lot of like, can you trust the job offers that come in? If people tell you they're going to give you a salary, are they really going to pay it? It can be bringing up some fears in regards to whether or not you have enough resources coming in, right? 8th house is other people's money. I'm not making enough self-employed, but looking for work. Okay. The good news is it's going to be one really strong Mars transit or Pluto transit that could bring something in. And I'm actually looking at, I'll give you a couple dates. When Mars comes into conjunction with your Saturn, around June 26th until it comes into a trine with your natal Mars through the 3rd, so June 26th through the 3rd, can materialize as like, okay, I have some kind of work that's coming in that's going to help me pay the bills. It does make me feel inclined to tell you, watch out for anything in regards to friction at home with family or in your domestic zone, and getting a little like rambunctious with people at home being like, hey, I need some help. Are you going to help me? Right? This can materialize as you going and doing some kind of busy work or clearing out things in your home. So sometimes I see these trines where people are like, okay, we need some extra cash. We're going to sell some stuff at the house. We're going to have a garage sale. We're going to get rid of a bunch of things that we don't need. Sometimes it materializes as somebody swiftly coming in and helping and basically saying, hey, you know what, I'll get you some money. I'll help you with this process of getting through a tight spot. Come help me do some domestic stuff around the house. Help me do some chores, take care of things. I'll give you some money. So that's another way this can materialize. But specifically, I'm thinking down the road. And down the road, you've got eclipses that, like a new moon eclipse that's going to be taking place in the fall, right around the 28th, I believe. Yeah, right around the 28th of October. Now, this is going to more so be for you. The 24th? Yeah, it's the 24th. 24th going to the 25th. That's setting a new kind of intention when it comes to work and career. Like when you have that new moon conjunct your midheaven, it is going to be about starting a new chapter. So I'm not saying things can't work between now and then. Okay, so yeah, so you're taking care of aging parents. That's kind of the theme for Cap Risings right now, by the way, with Jupiter and Chiron in the whole sign 4th. It's like having to either be at home or taking care of them. And if you are worried about money and resources, one thing I would say is like, having Jupiter conjunct your North Node makes me feel like there can be assistance that's going to come in if either A, documents are filed, right? The 3rd house deals with documents, or B, talking to either neighbors or siblings or other people or finding ways to be able to get compensated for care. So I don't really know how any of that stuff works. I don't know if it's something where there is some kind of like state or federal program, or if you are filing to actually be a caretaker for your parents, that you get reimbursed or something through Medicare. It might be something worth looking into, because you're going to have Mars in the 3rd house of documents and home care, parents trining Mars in the 8th house, other people's resources. It can also be a time where you're going back and forth going, am I going back and forth between 2 places trying to take care of them and also like being on my own? And is it hard for me to be able to make ends meet? Like, does it make sense for me to return back home and be with family, or like live with family, so that way I can kind of get ahead, right? It's the other way that I look at it. But, you know, at the end of this year, going into the new year, you're going to have Saturn come into an opposition with your Mars. Like Saturn and Mars, when they oppose each other, they don't get on well. And that may represent a little bit of friction for you, where you really are having to make some hard course corrections in regards to your career. And this looks like it's taking place like maybe February, March of next year. I would advise you to focus on doing that before Saturn makes the opposition with your Pluto. Because if you go too far in the direction of staying with something, being like, no, this is going to be it, this is going to be it, without finding something else that's going to actually bring in some more residual income, things can get a little dicey within about 2 years. Like summer of 2024, Saturn in opposition to your Pluto is going to be a time where it's like you really want to be ahead of issues with debt. You really want to be ahead of issues with not working in a profession or doing something that's like not cutting it, right? So this year, I would say right after the eclipse that's going to be taking place at the end of October, that's a great time to like actually initiate and start something new. Could you bring in some work between now and then? Absolutely. But like I said, I feel like Mars going through Aries for like the next month, coming into conjunction with Saturn, having to take care of a parent specifically. Saturn's usually a man, and the 4th house is usually your mother. So it's interesting because it can be like having to take care of one parent because the other one is, you know, dealing with some health issues and like physically can't take care of the other one. And you're going to be like, okay, I have to be here. It is in your Placidus 3rd. So it makes me wonder if you're not open to filing paperwork and trying to see if you can get compensation for being able to take care of them. Do you have siblings? 3rd house would be like aunts, uncles, cousins, siblings. Are there people that you need to be calling in and being like, I need some help here because I can't juggle taking care of them 24/7 and trying to kind of afford what I'm doing. It's not possible for me to do both. Now, work in general for you is Mars, though. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm so sorry to hear that. That's really difficult. A lot of Cap risings right now. I know that Jupiter is a positive sign, but the 4th house deals with, you know, sometimes end of life. Okay, and as Jupiter goes into your whole sign 4th, it's gonna magnify that. So I'm wondering, like, even though I know you're stressed about work right now, really the next couple of weeks, according to your astrology, to me, sorry, I'm trying to pull this back up. To me, seems like it's more about being present with what's going on with the home and family situation, you know? And work stuff will come along, like that will happen, but I think it's gonna be a lot more stable for you going into the fall, honestly. The one nice thing, though, is that you do have Saturn that is in Aquarius, and it's making a trine to your Venus. So it is saying that there will be work. It may not be something that is as busy as you would like it to be, but there will be work, and you're not really reevaluating whether or not it's actually working until about August, okay? So I would say between now and then, you do what you can. New job stuff, new work opportunities are going to be starting more so after that eclipse that's going to be taking place in the fall. And also for a Cap rising, Mercury will go retrograde in Libra. So it's going to start its retrograde actually in Libra, and it's going to drop into Virgo and then come back into Libra. So when that happens as a Capricorn rising, you're going to have the opportunity to be like, okay, am I going back to work, right? So if it is a couple of months where you're having to take care of family, your family's affairs, it's really positive looking at like September, October, November. It's like things are actually starting to kind of come together, you know? I hope that's helpful. Sending you lots of love. I know that's very difficult, and hopefully you have some support as you're moving through some of these challenging times. You're not the first Cap rising that I've heard that's been telling me that they're dealing with like an aging parent. It's extremely common with some of the transits, especially if you have a heavy hitter like Saturn in the 4th house. So right now, be present with your emotions, be present with your family. Good luck. Thank you for your patience. Those of you guys who are making your donations, I've got you, don't worry. Aileen, Amy, got Victoria, Lynn, Samantha, Miranda, Angela, Savika Moore, Amber, Kayla, Sang. David's in there. Dad's in the chat. You guys can say hi to him. He's asking his questions. All right, so let's go ahead and get to the next person. Here we go. Aileen, I've got you up, by the way. So anybody who made if you guys make your purchase early, I'll have your chart already ready and up for you. So let's get this up. So she's asking about Synastry. So it's about her and another person. She says, I'm Aqua Goat, January 8th. 1974. Okay, got your information. And then the other person is July 23rd. Fun fact, we met on March 6th, 2022, right when Mars and Venus went into my first house. You did a natal chart reading back in November 2021, and let me just say, every single thing you've predicted for me has happened. You're crazy good. My question is about my current relationship. While I'm continuing to work through my fear of commitment abandonment issues, we are doing really great. He continues to be my rock, but my ex is now standing in the way of us merging our families and children. My ex and I have been divorced for 3 years and co-parent well. This is my first serious relationship since our split, and I've never introduced my child to anyone before, but surprisingly, he flipped out when I let him know that I'd be making introductions and is not agreeing to it per our divorce agreement. Okay, wow, that's a lot. So the person, hi, the person who you gave me, the other person, is this the new boyfriend or is this ex-husband? Just so I understand who this person is, if you don't mind me asking. I'm glad to hear a lot of that stuff played out for you. A lot of people say that about my readings. Like, I'll tell people something like a year in advance, and they're like, there's no way that's going to happen. And then it happens. So not that I can't see things in the near future, but I'm more focused on like, hey, let's get you on the path. So these things that your chart says is going to come in. So that's cool. Thanks for circling back and letting us know. I love that name, Aqua Goat. All right, so this is your current boyfriend. We're going to talk a little bit about the Synastry, what's going on here. Those of you guys who are not used to this, Synastry is looking at how both charts kind of communicate with each other. So the inside circle is going to be her astrology. So she is a Cap Sun, Aquarius rising, and obviously her moon is hanging out in Cancer. So she was almost a full moon baby. And then the outer wheel is the new person that she's dating. My question got cut off, but I want to know when things start to go smooth for me. Okay. So you want me to talk to you about your relationship with him, or do you want me to talk more about what's coming? I can do a little bit of both. Since you asked a question specifically relating to Synastry, I'll touch on that, and then I'll just let you know some stuff that's going on. Let's start with your transits first, and then we'll get into his stuff. The bottom line is this. You're an Aquarius rising. You have Saturn going through your first house, which is basically in so many ways saying it's about you laying out the boundaries for what it is that you need in your life. It's like a clean slate. Ever since Saturn went into your sign, more so in 2020, going into 2021, it crossed your ascendant and you're like, I'm making change. I know this because that's what happens when Saturn sits on the ascendant, but I also know this because it conjunct your ascendant at 8 degrees, which means you were like, I need to go through a death and a rebirth. Like, I need to cut myself off from things that are toxic. Whatever's done is in the past. I'm moving forward, even if I have to go at it alone. So you made a commitment with that transit over the last 2 years to like really make these shifts. Then Saturn came into conjunction with your Venus. You had to really focus on loving yourself. There's been this storyline about like rebuilding your life and focusing on you and raising the bar for what you're willing to attract or like bring into your life. So somebody else shows up. Congrats. The challenge is that you have squares going on with Uranus in your 4th house, which means disruption, conflict, things going on within the family. Family is not limited to just your family, who you were born into. It can be also the family you've made. So ex-husband, your child, things like that, right? So I'm looking at Uranus hanging out in your 4th house, squaring with Saturn, where you're like, this is the new thing that I need. So I'm breaking with tradition, right? I've never introduced anybody to my kid, but now I'm going to do it. And then it disrupts and kind of upsets the apple cart. Specifically when planets go into Leo, I'm just telling you right now, hold on to your pants. So if you're an Aquarius rising, once planets go into Leo this year, we're going to see it oppose Saturn in the 1st house, which means likely your first husband, 7th house, is going to challenge your will and what it is that you need, and it's going to square Uranus in the 4th, which means August and November are hot zones. These can be times where he's like, I don't want that guy in the house if my kid's there. I'm not okay with this. I want her to come stay with me. Like things like that can kind of get thrown around, especially with the sun being in Leo, where somebody's really trying to enforce, their will on you, and you're going to be like, no. It may manifest, okay, potentially as you having to say something to him, being like, look, you know what, you can't be over here when he's over here, or if this is going to be a problem, then he'll come over here, when she's not around. But eventually you're going to have to kind of like stand up for yourself, and you'll have the opportunity to do that in August and November, and then February of next year to reassert what it is that you need. Now, the other thing is this. You're going to have Mars going back and forth in your 5th house, which does deal with boyfriends. It also deals with children. It deals with 2 people. So Mars going back and forth in your 7th house, your 5th house, is going to be how you're communicating with a romantic partner in regards to a child. And I feel like the 2nd half of this year is going to be things like, do you go on little road trips? Do you invite him, to kind of get to know your kid? Do you encourage there to be like communication between the two? So that way you're kind of feeling like, okay, they're getting to know each other. Something like that can kind of be going on. And I would also say that you have Neptune in about 25, 26 degrees of Pisces right now. It's in your 2nd house, and it's squaring your north node, and it's squaring your south node. And it can be about fears of what you contain, like what you have, and also financial fears. So when Neptune squares your south node, Saturn in the 5th, things can come up. I'm not saying they will, but things can come up that makes you go, oh my God, is my ex going to start some drama and like start some legal issues? Is he going to try to take my kid away from me? Just be mindful of that, okay? Just be mindful that there can be some things that can come up that he can say things that can scare you and make you feel like you're in a position of like not being able to defend yourself, or like having to go through like a lengthy battle. It is fiction though. That Neptune square is saying like it's not real, don't give energy to it, yada yada. Personally, the other side of this is also that you've got Pluto right now at 28 degrees, squaring Uranus in your 9th. And Pluto is a heavy hitter. It does deal with power plays, power struggles, things like that. And there can be threats, once again, because of that Pluto square, of challenges in regards to child support, who's going to have custody of a kid, things like that. So, I would say until Pluto finally moves out of that square, it's going to bring up either fears or things where somebody's trying to manipulate you and scare you into thinking you can't make decisions for yourself. I love that Uranus is your chart ruler and it's in the 9th house. It does talk about you having a really significant second relationship, that you also are going to be with somebody who is divorced, that you are also going to be with somebody and be their second partner. Whether you get married or not, that's neither here nor there. In astrology, if you live together, if you have a kid, or if you're together, common law, you're married, right? So I could see like, whoa, Saturn's in Aquarius right now. It's trining your Saturn, which means you've got another person who's in your life that could be a significant partner, and they have gone through some of the same things that you're going through. And like you may have support, and they might be like, yeah, I've been there, done that. Like I know how this goes, like what have you. And you have some kind of support. It's also spiritual support because Saturn rules your 12th. So I would say it's a lot of like meditating on diffusing situations, meditating on getting guidance from your higher self as to how to handle this, and like having faith that it's going to clear out, right? But just still prepare, because if you're an Aquarius rising, Leo season is going to be a whole nother thing. I also have this feeling next year when there's some retrogrades through your 7th that there's still going to be some back and forth with with your ex, right? And it is complicated. Like when you have a kid with somebody, it's more binding than getting married, because you can get divorced, but once you have kids, it's like, yeah, see? He has oddly parallel lives. He's also going through challenges with his ex. Bingo. So Saturn coming into the trine with your chart ruler Uranus right now is somebody who's coming in who can be like your soundboard, where you can be like, am I crazy? And he's like, no, I'm dealing with the same shit. And like you guys go back and forth about it. I'm not saying have like a hate fest, but it helps to have somebody who understands and has been through some of the same stuff, and it can be that outlet. So that way you don't feel like you're alone, and you guys can both kind of lean on each other and figure out how you can have a healthier relationship, and then also integrate kids into what could be a future relationship. I like his astrology for yours. I mean, you brought somebody in who's got their sun on your point of fortune, which means he opens something up for you, and it can be about healthier relationships, right? Leo in the 6th. He's got his Mercury very close to your moon, so it can be a lot of, how does it make you feel? What do you need? You know, did you eat today? Do you want to come over? Like, that's somebody who's going to talk to you about like Cancerian themes and be really communicative about your feelings. So I really like that, to be honest with you. The other thing that you've got going on is his moon is in Sagittarius. It's conjunct your Neptune, and it's kind of by sign in opposition to his Venus. So was this a guy that like had some issues with his mom? Do you know anything about this? Or felt like his mom wasn't like totally, you know, there? Anything in regards to that? Sometimes Moon Neptune opposition men, or Moon Venus opposition, it's like feeling like something's out of reach. Like women are emotionally out of reach, or he feels like he's dealt with women that are emotionally unavailable. So this can be a Leo that is not used to getting the attention that he needs. You know, he's used to people kind of like delaying. Just a heads up for everybody who's watching, this is final call. So if you want to get a reading, you want to get in the queue, you've got 5 more minutes to do that before we cut it off for the evening. I would also say that he's got Chiron pretty close to your IC, so he's helping you heal the wound or any issues in regards to anything with like your family and your home life. So it's like helping reconstruct the idea of like what family can be. And he's also got his Jupiter and his North Node in your 7th house. I'm a big fan of that. My husband has his North Node and his Jupiter in my 7th house. North Node is what we're going towards. So anytime you have planets, positive planets, right? Like Venus, the moon, Jupiter, North Node's not a planet, but whatever, in your 7th, it means like they're coming as like a part of a lesson to teach you more about what relationships could be like. So North Node in Leo is like playful, fun, romantic, hanging out with kids, having a good time, taking chances, like having date night. So that's fun, having the North Node in your 7th in that sign. And he's got his Juno, which is about marriage, and he's got his Jupiter, which is about expansion and good luck, in your 7th house of relationships. So he brings you the gift of partnership, and his Jupiter is conjunct your vertex. So it makes me feel like this is definitely somebody you were supposed to meet. His moon squares your vertex too. And he's probably somebody who is a little different or unique in a sense of like what you would typically date. Like I don't really get the impression that this is what you would typically go after, right? But sometimes opposites attract. So even though you're a Capricorn, you have an Aquarius rising, and you have got Venus in Aquarius, and he's got all that Leo. So it does kind of bring you guys together. One thing I'm going to tell you is that Venus in opposition to Neptune that he has, like I said, there's been issues in relationships where he feels like people are not honest with him, people are not faithful, they're not giving him what he needs. There's a storyline there. I don't know what you know about this, what has happened in previous relationships, but Venus in Gemini is always colorful, but in opposition to Neptune is extra colorful. And later this year, Mars going back and forth over his Venus is going to be like, are you guys on or are you off? What are you doing? And I would just keep an eye out, keep an open eye, pay attention, and make sure that that X isn't coming back around, because Mars going retrograde over his Venus can definitely be about somebody coming back and trying to be friendly with him. And it can also be people reaching out to him on social media. But it's not, he's not a bad match. You know, I like that your Mercury and your Sun is in his 4th house. I like that a lot. It tells me that you can kind of make him feel at home. You make him feel at ease. And I'm I don't know. I have a good feeling about this. A lot of Libra risings have been through a lot of shit the last couple of years. Okay. I have to just say that. Whether it's like back and forth with moving, back and forth with relationships, you know, that December, January, February period for him was not easy. So there's been kind of like this clearing going out. And what he's learning through some of the transits is that he can move into relationships rather quickly this year, but they'll get even more significant next year. So he's got another relationship kind of coming, you know? Hopefully that's helpful. Thank you for your donation. Those of you guys who want readings, it's by donation only. You can scan the QR code and you can make a donation. $40 for one question, $65 for Synastry. We need to have all of your information, time, date, location of birth, your city. And please put your question in the memo when you do. And donations and tips are always welcome. Those of you guys who are just hanging out, you're learning, hanging out with me on a Saturday night. All right, let's get into Amy. Amy. 1677, 11:37 a.m. And okay. I literally got smacked in the face with energy. My husband and I had a good day shopping, lunch, picked up my granddaughter. She and a friend were doing a slip and slide. Our dogs are playing along with our neighbors. Had a friend drop off. No one saw it happen, but Cooper, our lab, saw the kids get dropped off and bit one of the kids in the butt. He was playing on the slip and slide and he was outside. The kid was 5. Anyways, we feel terrible. The kid's fine. Luckily now all the emotions and traumas are coming up for healing. I had a large smoky quartz crystal break last week, and when I was crying in my bedroom, there was an explosion on my altar. Things were moved, another crystal broke. Holy cow. Let's see. You're welcome, Aquagoat. Good luck. Aries rising, Mars conjunct Chiron. Usually it squares to Cancer. Dog bites are usually associated with Sirius. So anything, I think, like 16 to 22 degrees. I know, I've had a number of them. That's where my Chiron is. I was talking to my friend, Rose Theodora. She's an astrologer. We were talking about dog bites. She got bit by a dog a couple months ago, and we were talking back and forth. And I said, give me the chart. And it was right when she had some squares between Aries and Cancer, okay? So here's what I'm noticing. For the Aries rising, the Mars Chiron, which can be about action, motivation, needing to take action and feeling bad about it. Whether it's like reprimanding a dog, you know, needing to jump in and save a kid, like whatever it is, like there can be this feeling of feeling bad. This is extra tense for you. God bless you. Like you are not being dramatic. This is very intense because you have planets at 15, 16 degrees of Capricorn. So the Mars Chiron is squaring your sun Mercury. It's opposing your Pluto. So it's bringing up this theme of like being like, okay, I want to jump in and I want to help people, but like also I don't want to be the bad guy, you know? So it's like you go and you help the kids and you pat them on the back and you make sure they're okay, but then it's like you're the bad guy because it was your dog, right? It's kind of hard to avoid confrontation when Mars and Chiron are on your ascendant in opposition to your Pluto. So I'm just going to tell you this right now, okay? Take it easy the next couple days. And it has nothing to do with the full moon. It has more to do with the fact that Mars is about to conjunct Chiron at 14 and oppose your Pluto. So like literally now until Mars comes out of a square, which will be about the 19th, things will calm down a little bit then, the 19th. This is if you're rushing when you're driving, if you're trying to, you know, quickly clean the kitchen and you burn yourself, you're rushing to fix something and you cut yourself, like things like this can happen because you're so like rattled. The other thing I would say is that, you know, Pluto in your chart rules other people's toxic emotions. So you're going to see naturally throughout the next couple of days, like really intense responses from other people. And it can be with anyone. 7th house isn't just your marital partner. It's anybody who you know, interact with in general. It can be people in the neighborhood, although that can be the 3rd house. Counselors, friends, you know, business partners, things like that. It's just all that intensity is putting a square to your natal sun and Mercury. So it's going to be people coming to you being like, what are you going to do about this, right? It's really reinforcing that 10th house Capricorn sun and Mercury. It's like, what? Okay, fix this. What are you going to do about this? What do you have to say for this? Like you're going to be feeling like a lot of other people are putting pressure on you to like be the person who's responsible for everything and being the shall answer man, which could in turn make you blow up. Crystals blowing up, things blowing up, altars blowing up. I've heard this a lot from a lot of people actually, like especially because part of the reason why we use crystals and other things to ground out our energy and transmute stuff is because those crystals, they in a way absorb things, right? It's an earth element, so it can absorb. So crystals don't just sit around and like constantly blast out. If you're working with like smoky quartz, clear quartz, tourmalines, things like that that are meant to protect the space and neutralize stuff, it's going to absorb stuff to a point where it's going to like crack or blow up. Like crystals have a tendency, when they go missing and they return to the ethers because, you know, that needed to be kind of cleared out. Or when crystals crack or necklaces or other things crack, some people say like, oh, like it took a hit for you. So it's a bummer, obviously, to kind of like have everything kind of like cracking and falling apart. But by the same token, it's like that energy has to go somewhere. So if you have those pieces, bury it, you know, or you can cover it in some salt and bury it somewhere, like return it to the earth, take it out to nature, do something like that, replace it. So I know that that can be kind of a bummer, especially if you have like a real prized piece, but that's something else that I would say. All the emotions and traumas are coming up for healing. Mars, Chiron, yeah, it's like this feeling of also shame. Capricorn deals with a lot of like shame and a lot of guilt. So I think Mars Chiron is like the frustrations and the meltdowns that you can be having about the fact that people are projecting that onto you. It's temporary. Like I said, once you get closer to like the 19th, this is going to clear out a little bit. We're also still in Mercury shadow, and that's creating a lot of tension for a lot of people because Mercury has been in a square to Saturn. You may feel the ding again these dates. I just want to give them to you so you're prepared. This will be when the Moon and Mars and Chiron come into the square with Pluto. So this is going to be on the 22nd of June, the 29th of June, the first bit of July, because Mars, your planet, ruling planet, will square Pluto. Issues with authority, maybe. And probably last but not least, when the Sun is coming into a square with Chiron and it's opposing your Sun. And this will be around July 8th. Issues with like needing to be working and focusing on things and like having to be dealing with drama and problem solving and stuff at home and how it's making you feel emotionally. You do have transit Pluto in your 11th house, making a square to your Chiron. So it's kind of like doubly. If you think about what was going on in like 2020 and 2021, Saturn was squaring your Chiron, so you were feeling the responsibility role heavily, and it was weighing on your physical body. Having Chiron on your ascendant, you need to watch out for like anger, frustration, anything relating to repressing your feelings. Like if you're an Aries rising, like you really do need an outlet. Like you really do need to like have a punching bag. You do need to be going outside and working up a sweat. Like there is a need to put your energy into some kind of activity. It can be really helpful for you, like transmuting a lot of this, especially within your physical body. I promise you that it is going to get easier once we get out of these squares in the immediate next like week, but really the second half of July is when this is going to start to kind of calm down. Hopefully that's helpful. Sending you lots of good vibes. Sorry to hear about the kid getting bit. Yikes. That's never any fun. Okay, we've got Victoria. Let me plug your info in. Let me pull this up here. And that was April 5th, 1983. And that was 4:41 p.m. Lubbock. If I remember, your Aries 6th house. Oh no, it's Saturn going through your 6th house. I take that back. So 4:41 p.m. Is that the right time zone? Yeah. Virgo rising. Moon in Capricorn in the 5th. That's what it was. Okay. 3:41 p.m. Okay, I take that back. There we go. There you go. Virgo rising, 2 degrees. Okay, gotcha. Gotcha. So, please review. Chiron Mars on my sun, 15 degrees. 8th house Chiron roll retro on my sun. 3 touches with all magical relationship signatures. I have no boyfriend. Some flirts. 6 weeks. Gotcha. Okay. So, I guess my question would be, did you notice anything when Chiron first conjuncted your sun? This would have been May 24th through like June 3rd. Chiron on the sun obviously is the conscious awareness of the need to heal oneself. But the sun in your chart is like, I think about psychic healing, spiritual healing, past life healing, healing issues revolving around men, abandonment, isolation. It can be about you taking the initiative to be working with men who are abandoned or who don't have support or who are in, prison or jail type settings. So there's that. It can be an initiative that you're taking as well because Mars came into that conjunction. So I'm wondering like if there was anything significant that happened right around that time, And 2, sometimes things actually come about more so when Chiron retrogrades or like when planets retrograde. So I'm more curious when the sun squares Chiron right around July 4th and 5th. And I'm also more curious when Chiron turns retrograde. I know you said it's going to hit it a couple times. It's right in the path. I'm feeling like when the retrograde conjunction happens, it's going to need to be triggered by something else as well. That is what's going to bring up some kind of potential healing crisis. I'm feeling somewhere around mid-September through the better part of October 8th. And men are in prison, criminal defense, but I'll look when nothing comes up. Okay. When the sun opposes your sun, that's like the reckoning, the turning point where you're like, okay, what do I need to change and transform about my life? I'm halfway through my birthday year. Venus will oppose that as well. So it's going to bring up this theme of you being like, how do I feel about the work that I've been doing? Do I feel like I'm getting paid enough for the work that I'm doing? I mean, Sun in the 8th house is about bringing in other people's resources, point blank. So it can be finally acknowledging the fact that there's been a lot of you doing work and giving service, but also feeling the crunch financially of, am I bringing in enough? It can also be fears revolving around, sex and intimacy and whether or not you're really open to that. So Chiron, when it conjuncts something, it makes you conscious of it, especially if it's the sun. When it retrogrades, it makes you integrate it. So I think the integration's happening more September and October, going like, okay, I've been doing more of this like nonprofit work. I've been giving more to other people. What am I getting in return? Is it just give, and there's nothing coming back? How am I going to pay bills? How am I going to be able to save? 8th house is savings. So there's also this emphasis on how you're feeling about money and resources that you're saving, and if you're actually saving enough, or if you're just constantly expelling energy out for other people with the work that you're doing. Really look for that September time, because it's not just going to be triggered because of the retrograde. It's going to get triggered because of the Sun and Venus, which is trying to get you open to receiving more. And I think it'll be a time where you're reevaluating perhaps your self-worth, what you're charging, what your fees are for business and stuff like that. I love that it's going to sextile Saturn. And I love that all the planets in Libra are going to trine Saturn. See, a lot of people are like up in arms about the Saturn-Uranus square. Okay, we had Saturn-Uranus squares all last year. They were difficult, but we made it through. Even when Saturn returns back to the mid-degrees of Aquarius, it's still going to sextile Chiron. So it's saying like, yeah, this is painful, but this is what we need to work on. So in your case, I think it's about restructuring the way that you're working and how you're breaking down your schedule and how much time you're giving to other people, unless you're feeling like you're being fairly compensated. That's also how much energy you're giving to dating, to other people in terms of like, you know, your sexual energy and stuff like that. Then we're going to see, it looks like Chiron will go retrograde to 12 degrees, 11 degrees. So it'll station at 11. It's going to come back. And here's what's interesting. When Chiron comes back into conjunction with your sun, it's going to be with Juno and Jupiter. Juno and Jupiter are married. They're husband and wife. So it's healing. It's going to heal something in February about the way that you view unionship and commitment, and clearing out any fears that you have about vulnerability or sexual intimacy with other people. So I definitely have this feeling that there's a lot of like goodies that are going to come in the March, April 2023 period. And that's also going to all trine your natal Uranus and Jupiter. It's going to be about how you grow closer in a bond with another person. The 8th house isn't just sex, it's karmic entanglement, right? And in your case, the dispositor of your sun and your Mercury is Mars. And I'm looking at, you know, Jupiter getting ready to also hit your Mars. It's going to be like where you find a lot of security, I think, in another person. And also the ability to kind of grow and expand and find yourself in another place with another person next year, right? Trust me, it's coming. Saturn whole sign is also going into your 7th next year as well. And that's going to materialize as like bringing in partners that are a little bit more financially stable and secure, because your descendant is a 2. The first hit is probably nothing. It's the second hit. And I have seen situations where Chiron crosses over the sun and somebody has a crisis, but it's more spiritual, right? Or it's more psychological because it's in the 8th house and it's the Lord of the 12th. It can also mean that you start working with like shamans and healers or hypnotists or therapists or other people who are coming in who can help you rework some of these subconscious fears that you're having. But it's not just Chiron coming back and stationing around your sun. It's actually going to be that Jupiter and Juno are sitting there. So it's going to be a divine union. It makes me feel like probably at the end of this year, going into next year, you're going to start learning more about like tantra, sexual exchange, like things that deal with like intimacy and like that energy exchange that you have to be able to have a really secure, safe, healthy, sacred union with another person. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful. Let me know. I have tons of stories about, I've been I actually like looking at a lot of clients' charts and making notes and following Chiron transits, both in conjunctions and oppositions and squares. But conjunctions have been something that's really interested me. And Chiron basically rips the Band-Aid off and goes, here's the wound, you have to deal with it. And it's going to keep coming up until you deal with it, you know? And in your case, it's a 15. So it's talking about vulnerability, talking about money, talking about resources, talking about taxes, like finding a way to tactfully communicate with other people and be like, you know, you need to pay me. That's something else that can come up for you. So let me know how it goes. Hopefully that's helpful. We've got Lynn. What's up, Lynn? Let's get you in here. And that's 5/23/59. And that was at 11:21 p.m. Honolulu. Okay, so May 23rd, 59. I would love a lunar return for this month. Just got a new home today due to divorce from a 17-year-old marriage. Thoughts? Lynn, there you are. Lynn, what city do you live in now? Let me know so I can put that information in. Because if you guys want a lunar return, I need to know the city you were born in and the city that you live in. Because the lunar return is going to be based off of where you're living now. Hey, Wendy, what's up? Okay, so now it is, yeah. So Kennewick, Washington. So that's where you live now. Okay, got it. Thank you. All right, so this is your lunar return for June 14th, 2022. So this is going to be in a couple days. So I've got you for a lunar return, Virgo rising. Moon is in the 4th, square the ascendant and the descendant. Neptune along the descendant with a square to the moon. Dissolving the marriage, bringing in the home. It's interesting to me that in this chart, it's a lunar return and the moon is exactly conjunct the IC. So it is talking about like feeling at home. So is this the home that you guys were living in together and then you guys divorced and then he like, you won the home or he let you have the home? Anything like that? Just got a whole new home today due to divorce. Whether you got the home, you got the money, whatever, it's about coming back home, right? The moon is very comfortable in the 4th house. The other thing is that you have Mercury, which is the lord of this chart, that is going to be coming back into Gemini. So it tells me that it's like about wrapping up what's been probably several weeks of like finalizing court decisions, documents, things like that, settlements maybe. And Mercury's in a trine to the ascendant. It's also in a trine to Pluto. Cool. This is me moving out and this is a new apartment. Well, the moon being there, I think is on one hand like an adventure because you're like, okay, this is like a new beginning. We're doing something new. And the moon is in a square to Neptune. So it's also adjusting to like not having another person around, really fully dissolving the marriage. Moon in the 4th house in a lunar return. It's comfortable, but it means that you're going to be doing a lot of things within the home, right? Focusing on making it comfortable, going in and out of the home, creating more of like a culture within the home as well. So there can be a sense of like you wanting to bring in different styles, different aesthetics, new art, things like that into the 4th house. The 4th house moon just means that you're going to be busy when it comes to the home base. Also, it's happening right around the time of a full moon. So the moon being in the 4th is like, okay, I'm coming home, and it's opposed to the sun and it's square Neptune. So it's also like this feeling of feeling the pull between home and outer world responsibilities. It could be, I have to go to work, but I have to focus on, unboxing all these things and putting everything away. Perfect example of the full moon. I said point blank, this full moon in Sag is going to come in, it's going to square Neptune, and wherever Neptune is it's going to dissolve something. So I know you see all those red squares. You're a perfect example. So if you're a Virgo rising and you're watching this, a natal Virgo rising, you can have some similar effects going on in your life right now. It's like you're feeling like you're being tugged between making relationship changes, work changes, and home changes, and you're like, oh my God, what's going on? Like, I have a lot of responsibility. I'm super emotional. I wish I had a partner. Where are they? Or they're not getting back to me. Natally, the Venus-Uranus conjunction is exact on my IC today. So freedom. You have freedom, right? You have freedom to paint the walls what color you want, buy whatever food you want, play whatever music you want, stay up all night, do your thing. Venus-Uranus is about liberation, and it's about being able to be capable of being able to express itself in its most authentic way. If it's on your IC, that means that you probably have an Aquarius rising. So part of what's going on over the next couple of days is you're going to have all these planets go into your 4th house, and you're going to be like, this is my space, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing that, and I'm doing this. And then the dust is going to settle in about a week, maybe 2. It's going to square Saturn, and you're going to go, oh shit, it's really hitting me. I'm here alone. It's just me. And I would say don't go crazy right now with the Venus-Uranus stuff, spending a bunch of money, getting a bunch of crazy things, weird, wacky patterns, because it's possible in about a week or two's time, you're going to be like, why did I paint the wall orange? Why did I get a crushed velvet couch? Why did I get a big, like, weird painting of, like, a panther? There's some weird stuff that you might bring in the house, and you're going to be like, why did I do this? I'm born with Venus-Uranus in the 4th house. Natally, I have that placement, so welcome to my life all of the time. It's just constantly reinventing what home means, and also having just like a weird, wacky, unusual kind of eclectic style. In your case, I feel like moving, it's also, with that being in Taurus, is like put lots of flowers in the house. It's gonna ease your way and make you feel more comfortable to adapting and being a new space, or possibly even using aromatherapy to help make you feel kind of grounded, or Bach essences. And also I think that this can be about you redefining what it means to have peace or to have family or friends in the home, where maybe you were married for a long period of time. Now you're like, I'm missing not feeling like I have someone in the house, not necessarily missing him, but missing someone in the house. So you might start having dinner parties, having friends over, finding new ways to kind of create that family dynamic, which is good. And I think that this full moon in your lunar return is the embodiment of, oh shit, it's not just my home life that's changing. Now my relationships can change. Now my responsibility out in the world can change. Now I can change, you know? So I would just say, keep in mind that while the Venus-Uranus stuff is really nice now, in about a week when it squares Saturn, we're not gonna feel as good, or like the harsh reality of the sacrifices are being made. So keep that in mind. But this is just telling me it's like you're the boss now. And a lot of what you're deciding to do within your home life, but also your public life, whether you decide to shout on a rooftop and tell everybody you're single and you're open to mingle, or you decide that now you no longer want to be like a stay-at-home like wife or mom, and now you're like, I'm going to go and start a new career. Really, the world is your oyster. I would just say for the next like week, really for the next month, because this is your lunar return. But for the immediate next week, you're going to feel everything very loud. Everything's going to be much louder than usual in terms of everything changing when it comes to the 4 different angular houses in your life, you know? Hopefully that's helpful. Let me know. Congratulations on the new beginning. Don't worry. It's just your first husband. That's why you have to refer to them as your first husband, you know, so they know that they're replaceable. You have to call them that. That way they know that there's potentially another one that can come in. So with those eclipses, you never know. You might meet someone else. Hopefully that's helpful, Lynn. Keep us updated. We've got Samantha. All right. October 24th, 1977. At 6:20 a.m. in Melbourne. Lots of Aussies, huh? I've noticed there's a lot of Aussies that have been coming through the channel. How are you guys doing? I think it's Jupiter. Jupiter's on my descendant right now. So I'm interacting with a lot of different foreign people. It's kind of cool, actually. All right, so let's pull you up, Samantha. Thank you. Sam. What's up, Sam? Third husband. 4 times the charm. I'm keen to know what I have to look forward to, what to look out for in the coming months. Born in Victoria, currently living in Preston. Thank you. Wow, look at that. Scorpio rising, 18 degrees. The moon's on your ascendant right now. Are you feeling it? Are you feeling moody? What to look out for? Well, what can I say other than holy Saturn squares? A lot of what you're looking out for is something you've already been feeling, right? So Saturn, it started to enter shadow when it got to 18 degrees. So Saturn is now retrograding. It's going to retrograde back to 18 degrees. So if you are a fixed rising sign, so if you are a Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, Aquarius, or whatever, rising, any one of the fixed signs, especially 18 to 25 degrees, you're either going to be feeling a Saturn square to your ascendant or a conjunction, only if you're Aquarius. So the good news is that if you're a Scorpio rising, you are having this intense period of getting serious and having to focus in this transformation. It's happening privately, right? It's beneath the horizon. So the first through the sixth house is very personal and it's private. The fourth house, where Saturn is home responsibilities, domestic responsibilities, feeling like you took an anchor and chucked it overboard and you're stuck and you can't leave your house, or you're very limited to what you can do, or you're having to work from home. Unfortunately, Saturn in the fourth year does come with some really heavy emotions. It's not unusual for Saturn when it goes through the fourth house to be dealing with family karma, issues with home or domestic property stuff, or some kind of karma relating to your mother. And, it's this most southern part of your chart, girl. So it's just like the one thing that I always tell people, I'm born with Saturn in my fourth, so I get it. When Saturn went through my fourth house, granted it was my Saturn's return, that was like the kind of reckoning and the turning point where I was like, all of these things aren't working. And I knew that if you look at the natal chart, the fourth house is like the foundation that you lay for a house, right? So it's up to you to decide, how are you going to lay this foundation? What kind of a foundation are you going to lie? And as Saturn goes retrograde, it's going to be doling out some karma relating to whether or not you've been doing your service while Saturn was direct. So let's talk about it. Saturn in your chart rules your third house of the mind, how you think, how you communicate. And it also rules neighbors. It also rules aunts, uncles, cousins, and siblings. So it could be how you talk to the people in your neighborhood. How do you talk to your brother or your sister? How do you talk to your parents? Whether or not you've been delaying or holding back on moving, right? These can be things that are coming up. So now that Saturn's retrograding back, it's going to square your ascendant again. So it means that negative mindset or depression or feeling kind of in a funk can physically affect the body. And it can bring out some of the more kind of spicy traits of a Scorpio rising. So if you have 18 degrees Scorpio rising, I want you to think back to what was going on when Saturn was in a square to your ascendant. This was like February and March. I'm guessing it didn't feel so hot because you were like kind of in a rut maybe, not really liking your day-to-day routine, feeling like things weren't going according to plan, really having to work on how you communicate and maintaining a positive mindset. Going for walks, doing breath work, going for like bicycle rides, audiobooks, anything that's going to encourage just like more of like a positive mindset can be really helpful, right? I guess what I'm getting at is reflect on what was going on in February, because Saturn's going to retrograde back now and it's going to come into some uncomfortable angles with your ascendant again. This will both be peaking at the end of July going into August, where I think there's going to be this showdown between your responsibilities out in the world, your work or your career or your aspirations, versus the responsibilities that you have at home and how it puts the pressure on you to grow. For some of these people, it's like feeling like you have to take care of a property issue or a parent, having to take care of a child, or anything like that. Breakup of a long-term relationship. Okay, I'm sorry to hear that. But this is also like Uranus going into your 8th house. So, that's where 18 degrees of the fixed signs are really kind of getting hit hard. Saturn can be about making big changes in regards to your home life and what's going on with your home and your inner world. And Uranus going into your 7th house is like a partner just totally acting out and just being like a real handful. So unfortunately, those 18 degrees kind of got dealt a more difficult hand because Saturn wants commitment. Saturn in the 4th house also probably wants you to be alone. That was my kind of experience with Saturn. So I think Uranus is trying to free you. So where the separation or the breakup from a long-term relationship is happening, to be quite frank with you, it's because another person's coming. Jupiter's going to retrograde back into your 5th house later this year. So that's going to bring the opportunity for new relationships. And I would also say that you are also starting to feel Pluto coming into a square with your sun. So that means like you really can't have toxic dynamics and things going on in the home base that's hindering you from being able to feel happy and being able to feel secure. And in the midst of all this, you also have Saturn opposed Saturn. So to be honest with you, this is your Saturn opposition. Perhaps maybe this is where there is like a reckoning that goes on where you start to kind of look back on the decisions you've made over the last 14 years. Saturn whole sign is in your 10th house of career. It can be about parenting, Saturn and Leo. And now that Saturn's coming into an opposition, I have seen people go through this and go, oh my gosh, I put so much focus on my career that I totally lost track and, you know, let kind of things in my personal life kind of get off track, right? It can also be a time where you are reflecting on whether or not you had children. So if you didn't have children, it's like, okay, should I have done that? If you haven't and you want them, if you still want to do that. And I would say with Uranus going into your 7th house, things get very colorful for you because people can show up very quickly. So with eclipses happening in your 7th, it's just trying to quickly kind of break down old relationships to bring somebody new in for you. And when you have a very strong Venus transit, which you are, Jupiter is going to oppose your Venus all year long, it can bring in new relationships, and it can be relationships with people who are kind of karmic soulmates, you know? Wow, Saturn opposed Saturn, Pluto opposed the Mars placement. It's just across the board, you got a lot going on. This would qualify as somebody who's like, you would really benefit from having a reading, like really sitting down, having a session with somebody, having it like recorded so you can have somebody break it down and kind of talk to you about some of the changes that are coming. But I will tell you that I would be excited because if you are seeing the breakdown and the changing going on in relationships and stuff, it's because you're meant to be moving on to something new, you know? Sending you lots of good vibes throughout your transition. Stay tuned for what's coming in August and November. And for mini Scorpio risings, I've seen like a really brutal, horrendous breakup, like with a relationship that you just tried to make work for a long time, and like right after you end it, somebody new shows up because you've been kind of postponing the inevitable to an extent, you know? So let me know how that goes. I'm sure you will be back. Keep us updated. Hi V, welcome to the channel. Nice to see you. Let's go ahead and get into, who else do we have here? So that was Sam, Miranda. Miranda. 10/30/1975. Another Scorpio. 6:30 a.m. in Lubbock. Another Lubbock. All right. So, I don't know what time he was born. Oh, it was another person. Okay. Just wondering if there's any movement or communication with him and I. So, Libra rising. Ah! Pluto square your ascendant and your descendant. You got eclipses and Mercury retrogrades in your 7th. To me, it looks like somebody who has not been communicating very well. I'm not saying that based off your question, just the retrograde in your 7th. 2/16/1980. So let's look at his stuff on yours. So for a late degree Libra rising, Pluto is on the most southern part of your chart. Technically it's in the communication zone, squaring your ascendant and your descendant, which means there's a lot of communication breakdown going on or power struggles in communication in general. It's not fun. So we don't know his ascendant or his moon or any of that stuff. So we're just going on the February 16th, 1980. But let's see. I do, Sam. Check out my website. Check out my link below. You can find my website at beyondtheveiledtarot.com. And I offer full or half-hour sessions, one-on-one live via Zoom. Okay. You can actually, my schedule is live, so anybody who wants to book a reading, you can book it. So one thing that I would say about this person is that, you know, And I was just listening to like a lecture about the Sun square Uranus people. A little unreliable. Obviously, you love who you love, but the Sun in a square to Uranus is getting hit pretty strongly right now because Saturn's on the Sun. So there's like this releasing or like letting go of feeling of like control, right? Saturn on the Sun is about, you know, being serious and being too fixated and too diligent and like too independent, and it's in Aquarius. So Saturn's hovering there right now, so it's making it harder for him to like relate to other people. You may find that as you get into June and July, because of his personal astrology, there is a sense of him being like, look, I'm not ready for a relationship right now. Primarily because he should be somebody who's undergoing just a lot of changes in terms of his life and or also possibly his home life or where he's living. Just thinking about where Uranus and where Saturn is in his chart. And it's enacting a grand fixed cross. So if he says to you, for whatever reason, in the summertime, like, I just can't right now, it wouldn't surprise me. In terms of like when you guys could connect in a better way, you know, this is somebody who may not really be ready until Saturn is off of his Sun, when he's had like enough time to be like independent and like figure out his stuff. It's kind of hard because he's kind of like, he's like your kryptonite. He has Venus in opposition to your Pluto, and Venus is like what you love and what you desire and what you find attractive, and Pluto is what we fixate on. So there can be this sense of like, I want him, I want nothing else, it needs to be him, when is he coming in? And he's also got Jupiter and Mars on your moon, so that can be like a really good emotional connection. But I feel like this is somebody that you're probably only going to be willing to go back and forth with until like the beginning of next year, and then you're not going to do the do-si-do anymore. It's an unusual time in your life right now, Miranda, because you're also having something that you call your reverse nodal return. So your south node is in Taurus in the 7th house. You get very comfortable in a relationship. It's easy for you to fall into relationships. You know how to do it. But your north node in Scorpio in your 1st house is like, you're going to find that it doesn't matter how many people cycle through your life. There's this reoccurring theme of like you needing to be stable and secure on your own. Like, and you might be like, oh, I'm so sick of being alone. Sun Uranus and the north node in the 1st is like needing to constantly readjust your energy levels and how you're feeling on your own, and not feeling like you have to have someone else, right? What's cool though is right now the north node is conjunct your south node. So it's saying it's like this flip where the past and the future meet in the present. So you have the opportunity to clear out the past relationship drama, clear out all the past fixations on other people, and you can bring in new relationships and people who are going to help you change and evolve. And like, I look at this and I'm like, whoa, the last couple of years in your life have been no joke, because to me it seems like there's been a lot of back and forth with people and not a lot of people have stayed. Because Saturn was in your 4th house of home, squaring your Sun, making you really focus on your inner personal world, and then Uranus has been opposing. So honestly, things are going to stabilize for you. You're coming into your Jupiter return. I kind of feel like closer to spring of next year, relationships are going to kind of pan out a little bit better. I also feel like you're dealing right now with Neptune in opposition to your Venus still. And he happens to have Mercury in the moon. So it's like when you're like, how are you feeling? Communicate. Tell me how you're feeling. Like, where have you been? Like, he's not good at that. Mercury moon men, especially in Pisces, can have a tendency to kind of come and go. And I also notice he's got opposition. So when he's on, he's on. But then he can kind of go rogue for periods of time and you don't hear anything. I would also say that with Venus coming into conjunction with Uranus right now in your 7th house, it can very much be about liberating yourself from past relationships, and like this feeling that you can't keep going back to old people or going back to old patterns. And I'm looking at also the fact that like Jupiter's coming into conjunction with his Venus. So this is definitely a guy who he's going to be looking for exchange in relationships, but to me it seems like more sexual. Just for right now, and it may be like that until Jupiter gets off of his Venus next spring. And he's just got a lot of transits that are just not really making him completely available. It has less to do with whether or not you guys are a good match. It has more to do with the fact that he's doesn't know how to communicate the fact that there's a lot of things changing for him emotionally and also within his kind of professional sphere. The last eclipse that he had really, really banged up this chart. It was an eclipse direct on his natal Uranus, which could have materialized as like changing of jobs, getting let go, having like a big crisis when it comes to work, putting the pressure on him to be like more independent. And it also squared Saturn in his first house by sign with his sun. So it's like, oh my God, you know, this guy's really going through like the cosmic washing machine really until like the better of like next spring, you know? I would say when dealing with him, to be honest with you, because he's got all that Mercury-Mars stuff, it's like when he comes on, he comes quickly. Don't get in the habit of being super responsive when he does come back around. Like there is a need to either have a conversation and be like, dude, why are you coming and going? Or where have you been when you're gone? Or like, why do you check out? If you don't do this, you're going to find yourself still having to have this conversation later this year when you have a retrograde that's going to be kind of back and forth in a trine to Pluto, where you can really kind of communicate with people from the past and really wrap things up. If you want to wait till September, you can, but is he necessarily a bad match? No, I'm not crazy about his Chiron in opposition to your sun. I feel like he can kind of hurt you and make you feel rejected sometimes because he doesn't show up or he doesn't partner in the way that you need. You know, it's difficult for Libra risings right now because late degree Libra risings, because Pluto is squaring their ascendant, saying needing to do the inner personal work, the inner transformation. And you've got Pluto coming into conjunction with your IC. So just, you know, I would advise you to either look into that transit, see what it means. But when Pluto enters into Aquarius next year, it's a profound shift in regards to your inner emotional world, your home. Sometimes you pack up and move. Sometimes there's a loss in the family. Sometimes you lose a home, you let go of someone. It's making me feel like for you personally, it's about you getting really serious about what it is that you want in your home life and what needs to change with relationships and partnerships to be able to better facilitate the inner world that you want. So if it is living with another person, if it is having more stability, if it is buying a house, whatever, the people who have really late degree cardinal placements, here, let me go to right now, are going to find that it's going to be a little bit more challenging next year when the North and South Node move into Libra and Aries. Actually, you're going to have an eclipse on your descendant next spring. Like things look really good for you next spring. I'm just trying to be honest. Like an eclipse, a new moon eclipse that you're going to have that's going to be on your descendant is basically saying from about March of 2023 through September of 2023, there's a really significant relationship setting up. But I'm looking at when the nodes move to square Pluto here, it's saying you have to release and let go of old relationship situations, and also really needing to reconfigure and rethink about where it is that you're living and if you're possibly willing to move. So there's big things happening next year. It's just a matter of really letting go of the people who aren't facilitating your emotional growth. Is he a good match though? You have to be willing to like wait around a year to see how it pans out, but I'm going to tell you he's going to be a difficult one to deal with all year round just because he's got Saturn Uranus squares going on. So he's kind of in the midst of having to make some big changes in his life, and I don't think he communicates very well. So the on and off thing for me would not work, you know? Hopefully that's helpful, Miranda. Hopefully we didn't lose you. I've got Angela, Savikamar, Amber, Kayla, Sang, Wendy, Matthew, you got a couple more people. Angela, can you let me know your information? I do not have that. I don't have your question, your birthday, your time, your city. I'm going to skip you. I will come back to you because I need that in the memos, guys, because when I have to go back through all of the chat, it's going to take me forever to find this stuff. I've got Savikamar. SIV. September 26th. Okay. 1973. 6:10 a.m. So you were asking, we want to know if it's the right time to change jobs. V, are you Angela? Is that you? I just want to make sure it's the same person. I'll come back to you in just a second. So in regards to Sivikumar, asking questions about making changes in your work situation. So the moon is going to rule your work. Neptune is in opposition to your moon. I guess the question is are you feeling really lethargic and energetically drained at work? Do you feel like it's hard to maintain the schedule? Do you feel like you're not getting on well with the people that you're working with? Are you forgetting things? What's going on there? Thanks, Angela. I'll get you in just a second. It's a really dicey thing when Neptune's in opposition to a planet, right? So like when it's in opposition to the ruler of your 10th house, to me, it feels like there's something going on where you're like, am I going to find another job? You know, what's going to happen here? What's coming? You want to be really careful when making a shift like this. You want to do something like maybe when there is either a trine or there is I wouldn't even say a sextile. I would say a trine. So, okay, you've got a new moon coming in your 10th house of career. It's going to be right along your midheaven. If you are going to make a shift, I would say you want to do it after June 28th. I think it's probably a good idea to look at something like when the moon comes into a trine with Mercury, which is changes and transformations, negotiations about work. And that can actually stabilize a little bit from about July 8th through July 13th in terms of making you're enjoying the actual work. Okay, cool. It can be challenging though. Like now that Neptune's retrograding, I would say it's really about your day-to-day schedule. You know, if you feel like you're getting enough sleep, if you're enjoying what you're doing, if you like the workspace you're working in, if you're feeling like you're not being drained, like you're good to go. But when you have a big transit, usually to the ruler of the 10th, what you're having, it's like saying there's the work that you're doing, but what you're dreaming about doing, right? Perhaps maybe you'd be looking for work in another country, right? Because the moon is the ruler of the 10th house of career, and it's located in Virgo, which is about work in the 12th. So I'm wondering, do you try to get a job working in another country? Do you try to get a job with some company that's international? Do you go into something that's going to be behind the scenes in regards to healthcare, wellness, taking care of people in need, nonprofit? I don't know what kind of work that you do, but you know, usually 12th house moons, they do something that's either international or something that's more emotional or psychological. So I'm curious what it is that you do for work. Your midheaven's a 4. So do you work in like housing? Do you do something helping people find housing? Do you work with therapy or psychological stuff? Is there anything like that going on? And Jupiter's also a square to your Saturn. So yes, I'm getting enticed to switch. Worry about missed opportunities. No, you're not really missing anything. I would say I'd be more concerned about, you know, when Venus is in a square to Neptune, because you might see something that looks really good at the beginning of July, but when Venus squares Neptune, it's like, I don't really know. It looks too good to be true. Like, can I rely on it? I think you're going to see a bigger shift happen when your chart ruler, Venus, is in a trine with Neptune, and I would feel more comfortable you making a switch closer to August. That's my opinion, you know? Hey, Sam, just a combo, full or a half hour, whatever you need. We don't need to talk about your natal unless you want a natal reading. Anybody who wants a reading, You know, if you want me to just talk about your natal chart, you can choose the natal reading. Otherwise, you can choose a combo hour. So it's going to be a lot of what we're doing here. I'll just incorporate like the Sabian symbols and also tarot. I used to work with advocacy for people with special needs. Okay. So, you know, personally, being that the moon is the ruler of the 12th house, I do feel like you'll see in about a year, maybe a year and a half's time, you're going to do more work in that regard. It may not be the exact same job per se, but I feel like you're going back to like legal advocacy or aid or anything like that in 2024, and you'll do more of that type of work then. So you might segue back into that, but you might be working with like groups or people who are going to be helping more for psychological or insurance related things. So there's going to be something like that that can come up within about 2 years that I think you might actually return to that. But your moon placement is a very clear indication that you're going to feel like you need to help people. So if you want to stay in IT, that's fine. But I think that you need to do something that's going to be more like working with people globally and for like an international, you know, company. Now, one other thing I would say is that when you have the full moon in Cancer, which always comes at the end of the year. So it's going to be, actually it'll be closer to the New Year's. There's a full moon in Cancer here in opposition to Mercury, and Mercury is retrograding, which means even if you haven't found quite the perfect job yet, you might be hearing back from a company and finding that you might be able to make a job change right in the new year. Okay? So hopefully that's helpful. Just be really careful, like I said, with the dates that I gave you, like navigating and making sure that like whatever proposal you're seeing in terms of a new job or whatever, that like they're legitimate, what they're proposing, the job, the hours, the pay, all that stuff. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Go back to Angela. Let me pull up Angela here. All right. If you have no birth time, we can do chart rectification. I would have to do that in one-on-one because I'd have to ask you questions and try to figure out the time that you were born. I have to ask you a set of questions and then also like look at a picture of you so I can kind of size up an ascendant with you. Okay, so Angela, where was this here? There we go. April 30th, 1979. (8:30 p.m.) All right, Angela, so let's take a look. You are a Scorpio rising Taurus sun. Yes, you are. So, let's see, what was your question? Anything in particular, Angela, you want me to look at? That Scorpio rising is really similar to somebody else that I was just talking to. I can't quite remember who it was, but I know there was another person. Well, now Uranus is off your sun. It's also coming for your 7th house, not for a little while. Feeling stressed since Uranus entered Taurus. When does the stress from unflattering revelations end? Well, part of it's the eclipses that you had, you know. There was an eclipse that we had at the end of April. That was right on your sun, actually. There was an eclipse at 11 degrees. That was a new moon eclipse. So it was a solar eclipse, which means it's very action-oriented. That eclipse is setting the stage for really the next year or so where there's going to be major changes and transformations. Now, it's happening in your whole sign 7th. So I know that your most of your Taurus is in the 6th, but whole sign 7th. So it's saying like feeling like obligated to take care of other people, having to serve other people, having to help other people, having to help partners. having to help support creating, building things for other people, delays, right? If you're a Scorpio rising with a 6th house Taurus sun, the frustration that's coming up for you this year is like getting frustrated in communicating because you feel like you're just constantly doing things for other people and that you're not making any headway and you're kind of agitated because of the schedule and just like stressed. Uranus is off your sun, so it's only going to get easier from here on out. That's the good news. But it's the eclipse that you had that was on your sun. And P.S., it's not just Uranus. You're also in the midst of having your Uranus opposition. So Uranus on your ascendant, where you're very Uranian, you're used to kind of being a little weird, wacky, needing your independence. I love Uranus in the 12th house, though. It means like you are really intuitive and you can have like precognitive dreams and you can be really sensitive spiritually. What's happening now is Uranus goes from being in your sign to then going into your 7th house, which means all of that weird wackiness of your usual, first household sign placement moves to the 7th. So you start dealing with people who are like all over the map, people who are, fresh and new and exciting. That's the good news. New relationships can come in. There can be new opportunities to meet and partner with other people. However, if you are in a relationship where you are settled, whether you're married or you're living with someone or you're a committed relationship, that person's gonna act like a fucking Looney Tune. Like they're just gonna be all over the map because it's in a square to Saturn. So it's gonna be people who you meet that are like, I want to stay here. I want to move. Like, let's be here. Let's be there. Like, come to my house. I'm going to your house. And you're going to see the battle between Saturn and Uranus is going to be the past, Saturn in the past, how you've always lived, how you've always responded to things emotionally. New relationships, new people come into your life. They're going to kind of rub you the wrong way because they're trying to get you out of your old, outdated ways of living. So it's going to bring up like, oh, I've always lived on my own, or I've always eaten this way, or my family used to do this, so I have it ingrained in me that this is how things have to go. And you're going to have somebody who's going to come in who's just going to be like, fuck that. We're going to upend everything. And the way that Uranus works is because it has a different, on its orbital path, it has a different rotation. It doesn't rotate like other planets. It rotates on its side. It's a rebel. So the way that it works is it has to go down before it goes up. So you're going to feel low lows and valleys before you have the peaks. So part of me feels inclined to tell you it's going to get better because you're not experiencing Uranus on your sun. You're not experiencing Saturn squaring. What you are going to be finding, and that person who you're dealing with is an Aquarius, so he's your Saturn. And you're constantly disagreeing. You're probably disagreeing about how you want things going on in the home, how you like things, where you want to be, whose house you're at, where you're living. I don't know. It depends on your relationship, right? So it's like, to be honest with you, as Mars comes into conjunction with Uranus, which is going to happen in a short period of time, you want to kind of duck and take cover. And this is Scorpio risings in general, because I know that there's like a couple that I've read for already. As Mars meets with Uranus right around the end of July, going into like mid-August, there can be make or break situations, right? Uranus bends, Saturn breaks. So Uranus is bending, saying, hey, we need to upgrade this. We need to do this. We need to do that differently. Let's do this. Let's change things, And they can act very erratic, but Saturn breaks. So if you guys are at odds at the end of July, beginning of August, about where you want to live, how you want to live, what you need emotionally, whether or not you're repeating old patterns, that person, that chaos, they're trying to bring something out in you that needs to be reworked. And for many Scorpio risings, I love you guys, but it's how you're communicating. A lot of you guys are going through some really low moods. And with the squares between, in your case, your 3rd house and your 7th, it's communicating frustrations and scheduling issues and delays, and you're getting kind of like frustrated, If you're in your Uranus opposition, there's a book that I would recommend. It's called Rising of the Kundalini by Barbara Hand Clow. I actually, on a whim, ended up reading this book, listening to the book. It's like 6 hours long, but it's all about, I thought it was about Kundalini. It's not. I mean, it is, but it's not. It's about your Uranus opposition and what happens and what gets flipped in your life when you go through this transit. So you're having it right now. It won't be exact until next year. And the funny thing is that when it's exact, it will be with both Jupiter and Uranus in opposition to your Uranus, which means most likely you are moving in the direction of more partnership living in a space with somebody or living in a new space and having to upgrade everything in regards to that relationship and also intimacy. I don't know if you have children, but Jupiter rules Scorpio's 5th house. So it's also like either how children factor into the relationship, or if you don't have children, it could be somebody else's kids, or it can also be just like needing more like intimacy and like more like date nights and love together. So there's not so much like stress, you know? But like I said, the bend and break, if you guys are going back and forth, shit can really hit the fan July and August, because it's trying to get you to kind of break with the past. So I'm not putting this on you. I'm just telling you that for all the Scorpio risings, if you have 18 to 25 degrees, those south node eclipses in your 1st house are trying to get you to be aware of where you're a little intense or unwilling to make changes. Remember that being a Scorpio rising, you're here to go through several different life cycles, right? So there is a sense of like shedding your skin every 5 to 7 years. There's always big changes. Moves, breakups, separations, deaths, births, like that's just the way that your life works. Okay, we do have 2 together and he wants to move in a year. Guess what? Y'all gonna do that, because it's also gonna make the whole process of you guys being able to facilitate the home and stuff better. God bless Scorpio risings. I love you guys. What you don't understand is Taurus is your 7th house. So yeah, your partners are really stubborn. They're really fixated. They can be fixated in their ways and what they need for security. But actually with North Node, Uranus, and also Jupiter going into your 7th house, Scorpio rising's partners are going to be like, listen, let's simplify our life. Let's do this. This is how we can have more security. This is how we can focus more on being able to have a better life for our kids, or for our relationship and moving together. So even though it seems wacky and that they're restless, it's meant to help the relationship progress. And like, I really feel like I would pay attention to Leo season and Scorpio season. Those are going to be the 2 seasons that are going to show you whether or not you guys are actually moving and growing and making changes. So many Scorpio risings are unwilling to move or part with property or move away from the city they've always lived in, or they have this fixation that home or living arrangements have to be a certain way, and like Uranus is trying to disrupt that. Let me know how it goes. Come back around. I want to hear, because I'm telling you, those eclipses are going to be wild, because the eclipses that are going to start showing up for you in November, the end of October and November, are going to be squaring Saturn and opposing Venus and a bunch of other stuff. So you've got an eclipse that's going to be in opposition to your sun that's taking place, which is really kind of clearing things out big time emotionally for you in October, November. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful. Keep me updated. I want to hear all about it. I'm going to move on to Amber. Then I've got Kayla and Sang. All right, so Amber, 5989. (10:30 p.m. Riverside). Riverside. Let me know what jumps out at you the most. Particularly interested in the stellium in my 1st house, the big rectangle chart pattern. Cool. Okay, so let me just look at just your chart here. There we go. You're in Phoenix now. Cool. Is it hot there? Because it's real hot here in Nevada. The stellium in your 1st house. Well, I mean, that stellium is, I mean, I have the same stellium, so yeah, I know a little bit about that. I think what interests me the most is actually not just your stellium, but the fact that it makes an opposition to your Mars. And I would imagine that that materializes as just a lot of back and forth that you have with other people. Specifically like your home life or your family life. Sometimes when I see lots of strife between the fourth house lord, there's like a sense of like needing space from one of the parents, which is kind of uncomfortable right now because you've got Mars and Jupiter and Chiron all on your IC squaring. Was there somebody in the family that had a health crisis? Did they have an accident? Did they have a fall? Is there somebody who needs your assistance in some capacity within the family? Or maybe they've requested that you come home or you help them with like a healing crisis. I don't know if that's happened, but I could see that happening with the square. First house stelliums, I view like the house trumps the sign. So the first house, even though it's Sagittarius, technically, okay, I mean, all of that Capricorn is intercepted. So I don't know if you know what that means, but if you notice your first house cusp or your ascendant is Sag, and then your second house cusp is Aquarius, Capricorn is intercepted, meaning it gets swallowed up. So when you work with Placidus, sometimes signs can get swallowed up. And that tells me that the theme of Capricorn, which is responsibility, motivation, direction, sometimes career, that's kind of eclipsed in a way, like it's like your blind spot. So being that it's in the first house, it's like, okay, where am I going? What direction am I going in? What am I doing? What's my responsibility? Like there can be a sense of like not knowing, right? So, I'm sorry to hear about your mom. Yeah. I mean, that's the squares that you're having. So it's somehow bringing you back home. It's causing a lot of friction for people who were born in 89 with the cardinal squares. Okay, so first house stellium is going to bring up the energy of Aries. Okay, first house is like what we instinctually do very quickly. And with Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn, like, do you very quickly hide? Do you travel independently on your own? Like, there's this sense of like you being like, peace out, gotta go, you know, I can't stay here. Like, you can get a little restless, and there can be a sense of like you feeling like you need to go places and you need to do things and have experiences quite often. So it's very different from typical Taurus energy. You can also be somebody who has like a lot of like physical energy and vitality, and like you feel like you need to be like running around a lot. Or maybe like there is a sense of like basically like not being able to sit still, right? I have a lot of cardinal squares, so it's like I'm constantly like moving around. I have to stay busy, you know. Cardinal energy is initiating things. So first exit stage left. Yeah. So when you take the theme of Uranus, which is kind of rebellious, not always reliable, kind of doing its own thing. Neptune, which is about perception, isolation sometimes, or the ability, in your case, to communicate. And then Saturn, where you get a little overwhelmed. Yeah, I could see where you're like, I can do a lot of things, and I do this, and then I do that, and then I do this. Like, there is a sense, especially because all those planets are retrograde, that it's very internal. And I would say be careful, because that can bring up, have you had back problems? Have you had back injuries? Have you had accidents? Have you had slip discs? Has there been anything like that? Usually Saturn in the first, especially when it's conjunct Neptune, can be talking about some kind of like karmic injury or something that goes on. It can be like sometimes psychological stuff as well, or there can be like imbalances that are within like the liquids of your body. I don't know, just depends on each person. But there's some ailment that either you have had or you had during your Saturn's return that slows you down and makes you realize you do not have endless energy. Saturn in the first does not have endless energy. Saturn conjunct Neptune can have like a little bit more of like a Saturnian kind of like gloom. So you might also be somebody where like if you don't have a lot of warmth or you don't have a lot of sunlight, you can slow down and you can have depression. That's something else that can kind of come with that conjunction in the first house. Very strong Capricorn energy, but it's intercepted. And it's also all retrograde, so it's internal. So it tells me that you're learning to rework some of these energies, moving it from the inside, moving it out, and not kind of keeping it trapped in your body, and not repeating karma of being like, I can do everything alone, because you have a tendency of kind of doing that. And with Saturn in opposition to your Mars, right, and Uranus in opposition to your Mars, bingo, broke your ankle, Capricorn, bones. There's always an injury that comes with a Saturn transit in the first house. Like this, with an opposition that forces you to slow down. I'm just looking at just like that Uranus-Mars opposition, that it makes me feel like there is a sense of keeping people at arm's length because you need your freedom. And what's happening right now with planets going into your fourth house is you're having to like go be and help mom and be around mom or somebody who had surgical stuff. So it's bringing you back home, which is creating this turning point where it's like, it's not just about being super free and independent, and it's not really about keeping people at arm's length. You're finding a middle ground, right? And also by sign, you've also got, you know, Saturn in opposition to the moon. It's not quite an opposition. I use like a 10-degree orb for those kinds of oppositions, but teeter-totter, you know, 1989 with all the opposition that they have between Cancer and Capricorn, you're kind of on the cusp, like later in the year. I'm born in November of that year, 6 months after you. Later in the year, Jupiter goes into Cancer. So it's like I have the Jupiter opposition exactly opposite my Saturn-Neptune. Saturn-Neptune, on one hand, it really, really strengthens Neptune. So it says like, hey, slap out of it, pay attention. And then Neptune says to Saturn, we need a spiritual practice. So I would really recommend for you practicing being in your physical body, being grounded, work with the earth, garden, grow things, work with crystals, cook food, things that are going to help you really connect to that earth element. Go hiking, right? Be out in nature, things that are going to help you really get into your body and be grounded so you can pay attention better and transmute anything in relation to depression. People who have these Capricorn stelliums also, they really benefit by taking like iron, magnesium, vitamin D, anything that's going to be about supplementing the bones. And if you're not getting enough sunlight, or if you're somebody who likes to stay inside, making sure that you're getting all of that stuff so that way the body is like, you know, kind of naturally fighting mood stuff. I saw like a whole article that somebody did a workup saying people who have these conjunctions from this particular time period, they need to be taking these supplements. Otherwise, you do fall into depression. Be careful with cannabis too. That can also be something that can really throw you off, you know? But yeah, hopefully that gives you a little bit more insight into that. I know a lot about those stelliums because I have one. So I really get it. And if you haven't seen my channel, I had a video that went not really viral, but definitely got a lot of views. It was like back when Saturn was in Sag. I did a video talking about the Capricorn stellium of that particular like 89 to 92 period. You might want to take a look at that. Yeah, vitamin D. But yeah, watch that video, check it out. Let me know if you decide you want to, like a reading, we can really break down your chart. I'm always happy to talk to you about that in the future. Hopefully that's helpful. What's up, Kayla? Let me pull you up. I think I have you here. Do I? There you are. Is that you? Yeah. Libra rising, yeah. Here we go. So 215. I feel I've turned a karmic corner. Not sure what the fuck I did besides set boundaries and love myself, but something is shifting and it feels incredible. I feel like I've crossed a threshold and good things come. Any insight? Hi, Saturn going retrograde conjunct your sun. From one Libra rising to another, can I just tell you, I'm fucking done. All right? I'm done setting boundaries with people. I'm super burnt out. Here's the thing. Saturn in the 5th house is about self-love. It's about what you're doing for yourself, how you're putting yourself first, choosing things that make you feel happy, choosing joy. So as Saturn goes retrograde, the next couple of months are going to be, depending on how much work you've done in this department, you're going to see how the karma train is going to kind of show up in your life. You've got it doubly because it's also Saturn that's conjunct your sun, which is your energy source. And I look at this and I go, it's a lot of reevaluating your goals and your friends, whether or not you're surrounding yourself with people who are supporting the life that you're creating. You can be feeling like friends are dropping like flies left and right. You may not feel like you have much of anybody left, to be honest with you. If that's how you're feeling, I understand. It's going to get better. I promise. It's just a little rocky right now. Your chart is really similar to actually one of my really good friends. She's also a Libra rising, Sun in Aquarius, born in the same year, got the same placements. And I've been talking to her a lot because, you know, we have the same ascendant. We've been going back and forth about just like, you know, having very few really good friends and realizing that you need to focus more on like being happy and doing your own thing. And if people don't support you and if they don't respect your boundaries, then they got to go. I feel inclined to tell you that. I'll tell you that when Saturn retrogrades, you really don't want to screw around because it can create this feeling like, sorry, losing my earring. It can create this feeling like, oh, things are easing up and they're getting easier, so I don't have to kind of continue
You know, I don't have to continue trying. Like, I can go back to work. Believe it or not, Saturn in the 5th is like trying to get you to create more time for dating, sex, your kid, having kids, focusing on hobbies, and really kind of just building out fun time. So it's ironic that Saturn is going to say, hey, wherever I am, this is what you have to do. But he's literally saying, like, create more time for fun, you know? And yeah, it clashes with your second house, which means sometimes you don't work that overtime shift and you don't make the extra money so you can have time. Sometimes you do take Friday off so you can have a 3-day weekend, right? And Saturn also in the square to the 8th house is releasing you of the karmic entanglements that you have with friendships that actually hinder you from being able to experience joy. So clearing people out, if you're feeling lighter and happier, that's a really good indication that you're doing the work that you need to do. I'm extremely pleased to hear that. I feel like it's good that you're feeling this strong and this confident now, because you are going to see Saturn retrograde and come into a square with Uranus and Mars. It makes me feel like you got to be prepared for some time, possibly in July through September, where you may have a friend that's like, how could you cut me out like that? I thought we were close. Like, you know, it's been hard for me losing you. Like, you're going to hear somebody that's going to kind of behave that way. Or you yourself might be coping with feeling like, wow, like I lost this friendship and like they didn't show up for me and like I would think that they would. And like now I'm grieving the loss of this friendship. Like I lost somebody, right? That could be another way that this plays out. So it's good that you're feeling this way. I think that you're really going to love, you know, June in general. Like, I got to tell you, having the sun come into a trine with Saturn, you're going to start feeling in the next couple of days like, okay, this is what life is about. I've made the right decisions. I'm seeing the bigger picture. Then you're going to see Mercury come into a trine with your Saturn, and that's when you're really going to feel like your head's on straight, the way that you're communicating is straight. You're communicating and talking about wanting to participate in things that bring you joy, right? I should repost it, but I saw this, like, somebody did like a reel on Instagram, and it was like this guy who was mouthing the words to an Esther Hicks lecture, and she was saying, like, when people ask you, like, so what are your goals? And he goes, to be happy. And they go, but what are you contributing to the world? My happiness. What is the most important thing? Like, what are you gonna, you know, create? Like, what are you gonna have that you value? Like, what are you doing? I'm living my purpose. Like, it's basically saying, like, getting real simple with being able to make joy or happiness or creativity the real focus on your life. Not the money that you're making, because it's squaring the South Node. Not what you have or what you don't have. Like, the way that you're able to make happiness or creativity or magic happen in a very simple way, without all the bells and the whistles, without the other people, without the resources, without all the toys, the people. It's what makes you happy. So the more that you're focusing on that, the easier that it would be to move forward. And I would say sometimes it's taking yourself, like, on a date. Like, literally, it can be like, I'm taking myself to the museum, or I'm, you know, going and going to the library for the day, or I'm taking myself out for dinner. Like, it sounds silly, but like these things will actually kind of build this stuff up and make you feel more secure. So it'll be interesting to see, because the real turning point is definitely the next month, and it gives you the opportunity to study something new, travel somewhere new, feel more open and optimistic about communicating and sharing your ideas with people. And then when you get into July and August, touch base and let me know, because there's probably going to be somebody who's going to confront you about cutting them off. But if you can't do it, you can't do it. Like, it's self-preservation 101. Like, a lot of this year is like needing to put your oxygen mask on first before dealing with other people, you know? Spending more time with friends, family, good connections, cleared flammy karma. I feel good about that. That's really exciting. Good for you, Kayla. That's like so much Saturn work. To have Saturn on your sun, and to be also experiencing Saturn square the nodes at the same time. Like I said, my really good friend has the same placement as you. She's going through it right now, and she's like, I feel like I'm melting. And I'm like, dude, all you got to do is just choose the higher vibration and everything's going to fall off. She's like, but people are going to think I'm selfish. I'm like, it doesn't matter. You can't care about that. So I'm glad to hear you're doing well. Patrick says, it'd be a cool idea if we had a group with all of us at Capstellium, and have found you through that video. So many have. Awesome. I remember making that video when Saturn was in Sag, and I was just like, I have to make this video. Like, it was the weirdest thing. I was like, I have to make this video. It's like really important. And it didn't make sense to me. And then the video went out there and I dropped off YouTube, and then I saw it had like 20-something thousand views, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, this is crazy. People actually watch this, and it's been because of that video that it's kind of been like the format for me to come back and then also like talk about transits and stuff. And I did it for Saturn and Aquarius. I'll probably do it for Saturn and Pisces. You know, just gotta constantly praise Saturn so he's not like kicking my ass all over the place. Saturn's in a square. Saturn's on my North Node right now, and it's in a square to my Sun and Mercury, and opposite Uranus. So Saturn is very loud in my ear all the time. Kayla, I hope that's helpful. Let me know. Saying, what's up? I got you in here. Are you surprised? This is a Synastry. He is February 11th, 1987. Okay. Maybe I'll consider doing a Capricorn group. We'll see. We would all probably argue about who's going to manage it, you know? Who's the best? Who's at the top? Who's going to be the person that's going to moderate that group? Lots of rules. February 11th, 87. Okay. In Australia now. He's married for one. Okay. 5 years. I know their marriage is going through some really turbulent times. Those transits wouldn't help either. We haven't communicated for over 2 years, and I don't want to instigate contact and don't want blame coming my way. In the separation stages, his hubby is still in denial about us, and he can cheat. He still lives at home with me. I'm okay with it. I have love for him, just not romantically, so it's all good with me. Do you see him reaching out to make contact soon? If we finally meet up next year, what do the charts say? I know he's my person. All right, Sang, let's see. Oh, he's married for a year and a half. Okay, got it. I was like, girl, if he's in for 15 years, he's in there for a while. Well, relationships for you obviously is going to be associated with Saturn. And he's got Saturn behind your 6th. His sun sextiles your sun. Saturn's on his sun right now. And for many Aquariuses, like the relationship breakdown or like working through relationship issues are really going to come up this summer. I know I keep saying that, but I know for Aquariuses because, you know, you're going to see Saturn on their sun and then all these planets in Leo making an opposition. A reunion could be possible for an Aquarius sun, especially more so next summer. So like the Venus retrograde, that'll be like August into September of 2023. Like I could see that because it's going to be retrograde in his 7th to his sun, and it could bring somebody back from the past who has some kind of like either Leo or fire placements, right? But one thing I would say to you is that it's going to take a really strong Saturn transit to make relationship stuff shift. And I'm not wild about the fact that he's got his Venus and his Neptune in opposition to your Saturn. It's this feeling that's like, okay, there's a connection. He sees you, but he's not always fully committed. He's not all in. He can hold love at a distance. His Mars is on your Sun, and his North Node's on your Mercury. I would say possibly you're looking at spring of next year, being more clear for communication. I mean, I'm not going to tell you to leave him alone, but I'm going to tell you he's going through the motions all year with planets that are bringing about friction in a relationship this summer, lots of change in regards to his status in the world, whether he continues to stay married or his work stuff in the fall. And then most likely, when Saturn retrogrades conjunct his sun, he might be like, okay, I really need to be alone. For all we know, though, it's like also he's being selfish in the relationship and he's not really growing and evolving within the relationship. So there's two sides to your story. The other thing is Mercury's been going retrograde over your Venus, so you've been thinking about people from the past and maybe dreaming about them or like wanting to connect with them but not knowing how. I would say maybe wait until you have some oppositions that come up closer to November. That might be a better time to communicate with him. And I'm kind of surprised maybe you guys didn't already do this when Venus went retrograde in your 7th. Pluto's also right on top of his Juno at a 27, which means another person could come in and could create problems in the relationship. I wouldn't advise it to be you because with your moon and your sun in a square, I would wait. Like he's got to be willing to get himself out of that situation, you know? Like that's my opinion. If he can get himself out of it and maybe he's more so open to communicating and talking to you November through December-ish, maybe January, and then there can be much more connection for you next summer. It's going to take some time, you know? I mean, it could take until next summer for him to undo the relationship. A Venus retrograde in the 7th house can definitely do that, but only if it's in alignment karmically. And a lot of this also depends on, you know, the relationship that he's in, like who that person is. I'll tell you, because he's born in 87 and he's got Chiron in opposition to Saturn, there's some issues with like not communicating and reaching out and talking about getting help when he needs help. So there can be a sense of him holding back on communication and not knowing how to communicate. So I could see where you're like, do I reach out to him? What do I do? I would say, no, I wouldn't get involved in that right now, because there can be a lot of drama if another person kind of interferes specifically. And I would say probably waiting for a reconnection when Mercury goes retrograde in your 5th. So I would say September through January is a better time for reconnecting with him. He may not totally be available at all until the end of next summer after that Venus retrograde. But, you know, I'm also aware that it's the retrograde in opposition to an Aries later this fall is going to be about whether or not somebody's willing to step forward and talk to you. So I would say let him do his thing. Don't press him. Just wait for him to return if that's something that you really want to do. And also, you know, you're getting ready to start seeing Jupiter come into a T-square with Saturn, which is the ruler of your 7th. So there's also going to be this sense of being like, I don't want to be friends on social media. I don't want to just talk on the phone. I don't want you to tell people we're friends. Like, it's very black and white. So be careful about getting involved in like a situationship and being friends and having connections that doesn't really evolve into cutting to the core of the situation, which is like, hey, I have feelings for you. Like, are you ready? Have you made space in your life for me? You know? It's the advice I would give you. And Jupiter and Mars, all these planets being in Aries, there's a real emphasis on being assertive right now as a Cancer rising, you know, feeling like you have authority in the world, whether it's at work or in your relationships, how you're talking to people, you're going to want to assert yourself a little bit more. So I feel like there's a sense of you coming into like a really good time period this year and next year where you're like, I know what I want, I know what I need, and you're going after it. And if he's not ready with that Venus in conjunction to Neptune, sometimes he doesn't know what he wants, or sometimes he can kind of drift into other relationships and not be so honest about things. And he's got Lilith in opposition to Venus in Capricorn. So that tells me that there's some Cancerian type energy that can come into his life that can kind of pull him away from relationships, and you're a Cancer rising. So it's hard to kind of separate from each other, but with his Lilith on the ascendant, you don't want to be seen as the other person. You want to be seen as the person. So don't get stuck into that cycle. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful. What's up, Russell? Unfortunately, we already called last call for the evening. I apologize, but I will be back next Saturday for tarot, and then the Saturday after that, you can get in there as well, and you can get a reading. I don't know who Deanna is, but we already called last call, my dear. I'm sorry. We did call last call, so I'm going to send it back to you. He always holds back. I don't want to have any involvement in his relationship. He's not honest to himself. Yeah. Definitely. Trust me on this. If he's going to come back around, it's going to be within one of the time periods I gave you. And to some extent, he may not fully be ready until next summer. But with Venus on your ascendant, it's hard to deny that connection. You're funny. Got a donation. Is there a single largemouth bass fishing in my future? If so, general direction to be looking for. So funny. I would say with let's see. Let me pull something up really quick. (1:22 a.m.) So this is for David, who made a donation. It was a Sag rising. I've got your info already. In general, I would say some stuff that's going on for you that's quite interesting. Because Jupiter is your chart ruler. Jupiter is now moved into Aries, which is whole sign, your 5th house, which deals with dating, creativity, art, fun, hobbies. Jupiter in Aries is like things you can go do by yourself. So I think of like, going, actually, fun fact, golfing. Aries is the 5th house. Golfing, sports that you can play by yourself. You don't always have to play with other people. Going and being out in the heat, or anything that involves casting. It could be fishing because of the Mars. I could see that. Woodworking, crafting, wood burning, any of that stuff can be stuff that you're doing. But I think Jupiter, when it fully moves into your 5th house, it means that it's going to bring you more Jupiterian things, expansion, good luck in terms of 5th house stuff. Now, the ruler of your 5th house is Mars. And you've got Mars that is located in your natal 2nd, which means you're going to be spending a little bit of money on your hobbies. Mars in Sag, it makes me feel like you might consider also possibly spending more money on travel and vacations. Mars in the 2nd house is anything that's about from the hip. So maybe it's like, maybe it is golfing, I know. People don't know, David is my dad, so he's making a donation, but he's joining in on the live chat, but I'll give him a real reading. But it makes me feel like you might spend a little bit more money on some of that stuff. Mars tells me that there is like this emphasis of feeling like you just want to be able to go out and have fun and have freedom. Sometimes Mars is also about archery. So it can be about like actually like shooting bow and arrows, or anything that deals with like hitting a bullseye, whether it's like throwing things, shooting things, hitting something. Maybe you'll invest in something that's going to like be for your swing, so that way you can possibly have like a better sense of direction, right? If you're asking specifically, so north is always going to be earth, east is always going to be air, south is always going to be fire, and west is always going to be water. So it looks like you're going to be doing things near southern parts of either your state, your city, southern parts of lakes, going to things that are going to be like warm. This is like more like warmer sports though, by the way. So Aries is warmer. But it makes me feel like you might start doing something also relating to like energy, or you might start doing something relating to like martial arts, self-defense. But if you're doing any sports where you have to like get a ball in a hole, or you have to like hit something on the bullseye, things like that are going to be really good. It's about like perfecting your aim, basically. But Jupiter being your chart ruler going into the 5th house, it's going to hang out there a little bit. It's also about positivity and good news coming in gambling, taking chances in risks, especially when it comes to gambling on sports. It's a great transit for betting on horses, just a heads up. I'm not trying to create a monster here, but you might take a shining to doing like horse bets and something like that. Oh, Tai Chi, okay. So Tai Chi is good. You would likely do that first thing in the morning. And I like that all this energy in your 5th house is sextiling your 3rd. So it makes me feel like it's also going to improve your ability to like calm and breathe, like breath exercises, things that's aligning like the body and like the chi, that's energy, that's Aries, with the 3rd house. And it's also like moving around, so there's movement, like doing things around the neighborhood. That's the 3rd house. One other thing I would say that's also kind of interesting that you've got going on is that you have, later in the year, you're going to have that Mars retrograde in the 7th. And that's going to bring up this theme of people from the past returning, or like an undoing of like agreements. So Mars retrograde is like, there can be a little bit of like back and forth with somebody. Mars is going to go over your south node, which means like you are going to have some kind of communication with somebody from the past. It's very strong from about mid-September. And it'll be mid-September until about November, where it's like you're going back and forth with some kind of like romantic entanglement from the past. I only bring this up because it's going to oppose your natal Mars. So it makes me feel like Maybe you're also like the mediator for other people. Mars can be your kids, so you can be like the mediator for your kids, like going back and forth between two of them. There can also be a sense of like you having to work harder at cutting or severing or like releasing, feeling the need to like be talking to someone from the past. People can come in that can be like trying to get a hold of you. Funny you mentioned racehorses. You lost $50 in stakes today. Tell me when you want to have when you would like to have the best transits to be able to go and place your horse bets. I can give you those dates if that's something that you want. You want to do it like when you have like maybe Mars trine your natal. It'll be your natal Jupiter, which you do have coming up. You're gonna have better luck. June 22nd. And also June 26th. Those might be 2 days that I would try the horses a little bit better. And when you're picking horses, I'm not just saying, because I don't know anything about horse racing, but when you're picking horses, you want horses that have the color red on them because it's Aries, or that are younger or have younger jockeys. Like if it's like, oh, this is like a new horse, like it's his debut or whatever, like just because they're newer horses or they're younger doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to be winners. So look for horses that have red coloring, younger jockeys, fresher horses that have less experience, and look at those 2 dates. Those could be days that could be better. And if you want, just send me a message. I'll tell you all the best days to go gambling. Thanks for your donation. Everybody say hi to Candace's dad. All right, we've got Wendy, we've got Matthew. Wendy, let's see if I have you here. Let's see. I know I have your information, so I can pull it up. Thank you guys for your patience. So Wendy, July 13th, 1965. (3:34 a.m.) Westminster. Cool. Wendy, Gemini rising. What's up, girl? He was wearing red today. Okay, so let's see, Wendy, I caught little snippets of the things that you were saying. You have to let me know what your question is. Currently in New Mexico. Hey girl, hey, living your best life. Well, my eyes are getting really big looking at that full moon that's coming in your 7th house, which tells me that that is going to be a rather big time in a couple days here, that it's squaring Neptune. So it's this feeling of like, you know, maybe you're going to vanish and take a couple days off of work, or you're not going to be so available for work calls, or there's going to be a sense of you being like, no, I'm doing what I need to do. I'm focusing on me. It's not about other people. That moon is a bit of a doozy because it's gonna do some stuff in your chart. It's gonna square Neptune in the 10th, so it's kind of clearing out any feeling of like needing to like be self-sacrificial at work, or where you're like overwhelmed at work, or where you're putting too much time or energy, or if you're just feeling lost. Like, take it easy with this full moon. Convention tomorrow with big bosses. Am I great? Well, I mean, the fact that that's happening, it makes me feel like it's a lot of partnering with other people. And to me, I think with the square to Neptune in your 10th is it's talking about like your vision. So you might like deal with some people that are like bullshitters. I'm not gonna lie. There might be some sense of like you going and like meeting with people who like think they know what they're doing, but they're kind of like the blind leading the blind. So you have to be really mindful that there are some people that you might kind of deal with that like don't really know what they're talking about. And there's like a sense of you being like, oh yeah, sure, okay, great, glad to hear you're doing well. And it's like you may not really like engage with them too much, I guess. The other thing I would say is that it is reinforcing that there does need to be a dissolving of old work contracts to make space for things that are new, but you have to suss it out and make sure that it's like going to be a good match. Oh, new opportunity. Okay, cool. So make sure that these people are legitimate. I'm sure you're going to suss them out with that Capricorn moon. I'm not worried about it. To be honest with you, I see new opportunities coming, especially when Venus comes into conjunction with your North Node. From July 3rd through the better part of like mid-July, there seems to be a sense of being like you're talking about it, you're doing the back and forth, and then you're going to solidify and you're going to be making those agreements in mid-July when Venus comes into a trine with Saturn, and you're like, okay, yes, I do feel good about making this change. And also there's some negotiation going on in mid-July because then you got a full moon that's going to be happening in Capricorn, and it's going to be very close to your natal moon, which means you're making a deal, which then in turn could help you sever off previous, work obligations, responsibilities, whatever, because you're moving on to something new. So I think it's great. I think that this is also about going and mixing and mingling and networking with other people. I'm not saying that because you're going to a convention. I'm saying that because you got Jupiter hanging out in your in your 11th. So Jupiter making, that aspect is going to sextile your ascendant. Yes, you're going to get seen, but it's going to help you partner with other people, right? Being seen is definitely something that you're going to see more of also when Jupiter retrogrades back into Pisces later this year. So between Jupiter square your sun, it's all about who you're talking to, who you're meeting, who you're exchanging information with. I have a feeling like it's really important to have information, whether it's business cards, pamphlets, whatever, that you can exchange with people, or just giving your information out, giving your business cell phone out, giving your email out to people so they can see it, especially now that Saturn is retrograding back and it's going to make oppositions to your Mercury. And it's really just saying that you're going to go a lot further by going and being with groups. It's all about who you know. So it's not just going to conventions, but maybe it's going to be like going to like business breakfasts and mixers, and like maybe going to like, entrepreneurial dinners once a month, and like connecting with the community. It's going and participating. Jupiter in the 11th is going to be participating. People will invite you too. So going to conventions and going to some of these things, you're going to meet people who are going to be like, oh, hey, come to this thing. Like, hey, come and meet Wendy. She does X, Y, and Z. It's all about who you know this year, Jupiter in the 11th. You're going to make a new group of friends. Mike was actually talking about this recently on the podcast, how he was like, oh yeah, I met all these new people, 12 years ago when Jupiter went through here. And like, he's still really good friends with some of those people now. He's at one of their weddings this week. So those new people are coming in, but it's going to be people who are also independent, entrepreneurial, right? They're business savvy. And Aries is very much like somebody who's going to go and forge their own way. So you're going to want to be around people, and they might be younger people. There might be a lot of men also. Aries is men. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I could see that being the case as well. And I think with Jupiter square your sun and your moon in this next year, it's like you might have too many new acquaintances next year that it's like you're trying to accommodate all of them. I'm also looking at like when Mars comes into a square with your sun and also your moon, it's going to be you feeling like you really need to break off with people who you've been working with, and you're breaking into something new. That's going to come at the end of June. I would be really surprised if you're not undergoing a negotiation the first couple of days of July and deciding whether or not you're going to take something new right around that full moon that's going to be in Capricorn. So I'd say maybe as you get closer, if you want to do like a lunar return, like a month from now or something, it can be a good thing to look at, because it'll give us an idea as to like what's coming, Oh, you met him. Cool. Yeah, it's his birthday today. Being seen, though, I mean, listen, Wendy, Saturn's going to come into conjunction with your midheaven. That's going to be in the new year. So that's definitely going to put you at the top of some kind of business, some corporate thing. People are going to see you as like a boss. I mean, it's all building up to that, basically, between now and February, March of next year, But right now, I would say we're waiting until Mars comes in conjunction with your ascendant, because then you're going to be really busy moving and shaking, meeting people. There's lots of new partnerships that are going to be happening behind the scenes. People who are foreigners, people who are really culturally different and diverse. They're from other places, doing a lot of work behind the scenes. That's what's going to be happening. Awesome. I look forward to it. Let me know. I can't wait to see you. I've got Matthew, another Aussie. What is going on? Jupiter does rule Sagittarius. I have Jupiter going to my 7th. So many Australians and a couple like Russians. just so many different like new clients and like people who I'm like working with. It's kind of cool to see. So obviously we're hitting some kind of, maybe, I don't know, what time is it in Australia right now? Are people just like, oh, I feel like getting an astrology reading. It's like lunchtime. I don't know what time it is there right now, but we'll see. All right, Matthew. So June 25th, 1999. And 4:49 a.m. Oh, you're asking me about degrees, so you know some stuff. Okay. Fern Tree Gully, Australia. Let's see. Oh, it's Melbourne. Okay, so we're going to go by Melbourne because that's not coming up. Okay, Matthew. 26-degree Taurus rising. There we go. Hey, Candace, I love your insight on the full moon. I've been experiencing awesome manifestations coming true, meeting new people, associations in terms of my passion dancing. Not too much with romance. I want to know what to indulge in with this full moon. Thank you. Hi, Catherine. Good morning. Okay, Matthew, let's look at the full moon coming. So the full moon is going to be in Sag, around 23 degrees. So being that you have a full moon in the 7th, this is interesting because it does create that in conjunct to your ascendant. So actually a full moon in the 7th is bringing up the theme of relationships and partnerships, but it's at a funky angle with your ascendant. So what this is doing is it's basically getting you out of your comfort zone. It's like partners who are going to be like, hey, be more adventurous, or hey, this is what my philosophy is. This is my belief. And it kind of disrupts the ascendant, where Taurus risings are slow. They take their time. They don't like being rushed. They want to focus on security. They want to focus on their needs. And there's going to be themes with relationships where people are stepping in being like, hey, you know, this is what I believe in. This is where I'm going. This is what I'm, working on, whatever. When the 7th is kind of active. It is also squaring Neptune, which is in your 10th house, which means there's going to be this turning point where it's like, am I getting too comfortable being on my own? Am I keeping myself from being able to be in relationships? What are my goals in relationships? It could materialize as somebody asking you if you want to get together and do something, because the square from Neptune is like a friendship or like something social that comes up that can lead to a chance encounter and meeting someone as well. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. But you want to think back to intentions that you were setting back in a Sagittarius season last, November, December. Then we were still having eclipses, by the way, in Sag and Gemini. So there was something going on there that still has that eclipse energy. For a Taurus rising, I mean, you've had for the better part of, the last year and a half, the South Node going through your 7th house. So it's like, it doesn't mean that you lose relationships. It doesn't mean that you focus on them either. The North Node's been going through your sign and your ascendant, which means my body, my pleasure, my security, my needs, and everything else like comes second, right? So if a relationship is around, great, but it doesn't mean that that's your focus. And right now you're really focused on either your body or what you're physically kind of bringing into your life. Now, secondly, I would also say that because this is a moon that is in a sextile to Saturn, it is bringing up this theme of like, okay, what am I changing and transforming in terms of my beliefs or my philosophy with relationships? Am I establishing relationships with people in other places? Am I willing to kind of broaden my horizons when it comes to where I'm willing to travel, who I'm willing to connect with, what I'm willing to learn, who I'm willing to kind of partner with? And it does take a really strong either Mars or Pluto transit for big transformations to be happening in your relationship sector. You were born with your sun in opposition to Pluto. That does tell me that you are very likely to either meet or connect or fall in love with people at a distance, whether this is people who are culturally different or people who are in another part of the world or another part of the country that you're living in. Whole sign, the sun rules your 4th. So that tells me that you at least maybe interact, and maybe you have an attraction to people who speak another language, or maybe they have a different background, they come from a different place. And with the sun opposed Pluto, there's this theme of like constantly feeling like wrapping your mind around the idea of relationships, and perhaps getting involved in relationships where there's like lots of entanglement and what people want, and how that actually kind of sometimes takes away from you. Sun opposed Pluto is not an easy aspect to have in your chart. And being that Pluto rules relationships, people who come into your life can be very intense and transformative in a good way, or in a way that makes you feel like it's taking away from your resources. You gotta be careful. I'm also liking the fact that this full moon is in a trine to your Jupiter. And that's broadening your horizons also in regards to like some of your career manifestations and goals. So this can be more so relationships, 7th house full moon, but more who you're partnering out in the world with professionally, who you're aligning with, who's supporting you, who's managing you. You're saying like you're passionate about dance. I'm wondering, is this opening something up for a manager? Does this open up something where somebody is going to be wanting to partner with you or have you work with them, or a really significant entertainer maybe who you end up doing some kind of work with, because the 7th house can be fame. So it's not a bad moon. I think it's going to get you out of your comfort zone. I would say the next one that you really want to watch for is more so going to be the next full moon, which I know that that's a month away. But this one gets you out of your comfort zone, I think, to bring up the themes of what this next full moon is going to be all about. Oops, sorry. And to me, that looks, dare I say, maybe a little bit more uncomfortable. Right here. The moon opposed your sun. It's also going to bring up the theme of your Mercury. So it's going to be like, how does it make you feel? Do you want to move? Are you changing your home? Like, how are your resources? Like, this moon gets you uncomfortable. So that way you're in preparation, because, a quincunx or an inconjunct always happens before an opposition. So it brings up the friction before you make the decision, before you make the separation, before you make the change. And 8th house full moons can be about intimacy and merger. You had an eclipse on your ascendant in November, and that eclipse happened and there was a south node kind of movement through your 7th. So it was meant to be clearing out relationships. New stuff is going to come when you have probably some eclipse energy in your 7th. So I know there's going to be a new moon in the whole sign of Scorpio, but that's not going to be in your Placidus 7th. Look for the new moon right around the end of November. That's going to be in Sag, and it's going to be in very close proximity to Venus. So more stuff seems to be kind of setting up then, especially because it's also going to be starting to make sextiles to Saturn and stuff, and things are kind of solidifying. Okay? But yeah, look for what comes up that's uncomfortable, that gets you out of your comfort zone. Maybe you're like, I'm going to stay at home with my snacks and do my thing or whatever. And somebody's like, hey, let's go to this party. Come with me. Like, be my wingman. And you're like, I would rather not go. There are going to be things that come up with the full moon that make you uncomfortable to get you out of your comfort zone. So you're more willing to kind of look at partnering with other people, maybe. Hopefully that's helpful. Just for my curiosity, is Deanna still here? Let me know. Otherwise, I'll give you guys the rundown. Whoever's been watching this for like the last 2.5 hours, thanks for hanging out with me on Saturday. Thank you for spending this listening to readings and learning a little bit more about astrology. Tomorrow I have astro weather. It's going to be my forecast for the week ahead. We're going to talk all about what's going on. I already talked about the full moon in Sag. If you didn't already see my video, check out my playlist on YouTube. I did a full moon in Sag. I talk about all the important midpoints, the squares to Neptune, what's going to happen for the 12 signs. Check it out if you want to watch that. Next week, on the 18th, we are doing live tarot readings. So next Saturday's tarot readings. If you want to join memberships, consider that. It makes it possible to do what we're doing. Monday, we're going to have a new podcast on the Midheaven podcast that comes out. So do check that out. And in like the next week or two, we're going to be talking all about the transits, like Mars square Pluto, some of the other stuff that's kind of going on, obviously the new and the full moons. But if you didn't get a reading, you want to get a reading next week, or if you want to get a reading that's tarot, check that out on Saturday. Mari, if you're still here, I'll answer your question. I won't leave you hanging. And then she's the last one for the night. So that was 6:15:82. (10:16 a.m.) and that was in Albuquerque. Pick one: love, health, or money. Which one do you want to know about? We're answering one question per person just for the sake of time. And for the next year, so it's going to be kind of across the board. Ah. Happy almost birthday. I see your birthday's in a couple days. All right, so we've got June 15th, 82, 10:16 a.m., New Mexico. Cool. Love. Okay, cool. So you're a Leo rising. Good question. That's probably the one that you really want to know. So here's the deal. You've got Saturn moving into your 7th house, and it's in a direct opposition with your ascendant. So to me, it seems almost as if like there's this feeling of like kind of being kept at odds with certain relationships or individuals. Saturn doesn't deny, he delays. So it's about maturing and growing into relationships. Quite frankly, I really like this because even though it's challenging having Saturn on an angle, it's in a trine to your sun, which is your chart ruler, which is saying relationships are being founded on the foundation of a friendship. Okay, Leo risings, they love to like jump in, balls to the wall, and be like, oh my God, I'm so in love, we're doing this thing. But like partners are crazy because you have Aquarius in your 7th house cusp. So people don't always stay. So what you're going to learn is that there's what you like, and then there's what you need, right? And what you need is solid friendships. If a relationship grows from that, awesome. But focus on making the foundation of a friendship, of a relationship, a friendship. Because Saturn in your 7th house is saying you need to do that. So it might be being friends first, getting to know each other, letting friends set you up, going to a dinner party, you meet somebody, you become friends, and you start dating, something like that. You could date a friend. It's about your friends playing a role also in your dating life. So I would say ask your friends, what do you think my match would be? I'm single, hook me up with someone, introduce me to someone. Communication is that air trine between Saturn in the 7th to your sun in the 11th. It's also about being more social and just focusing on going out and having a good time. And if you meet somebody, it happens organically. It's not because you're looking for it. Then you've also got Saturn that's in a trine to Pluto in your 3rd, which is how you communicate and express your ideas, how you communicate in relationships, what your thoughts are in relationships. Somebody could come in that could totally change your whole perspective on how you see relationships this year, right? And I think that's really wonderful. I'm also looking at Uranus, ruler of your 7th house of relationships, coming into a conjunction with your Venus. I'm not concerned about your love life. I'm more concerned about you like falling in love with somebody at work, and it's like a very no-no type situation. Falling in love with a boss, Uranus conjunct Venus in the 10th. Venus conjunct Uranus can also mean that you're identifying differently in the world. So I can see this transit as being like, you were in a relationship for a long time, but now you're single and you're telling people that you are, right? Because sometimes Saturn in the 7th with Uranus on Venus is like, ooh, you know, what's going on here? There could be something going on here that's not like matching up. So if you are single, it's about telling it, screaming it from the rooftops. If you're not single and you're looking for somebody, I would say watch out for complicated relationships that happen in the workspace, because you have Venus hanging out in the 10th and your 11th house lord is conjuncting it. Through changes in your career, you meet new people, which could also open things up and make it possible for you to be in a relationship. You could meet somebody new. So I would learn about Uranus conjunct your Venus because it's a very exciting time. Lots of opportunities happen. People will start pursuing you at work, so watch for that. You can also meet people who are like in situationships, going through breakups, things like that, and like there's a problem in their relationship and they start pursuing you. So make sure that people who do come in, that you kind of suss them out, and it can be really difficult separating the difference between your romantic life and also your work life, right? That's something that's going to go on. Uranus is going to be conjunct that all year. So the first conjunction is going to happen around early July. And then Mars and Uranus are going to conjunct on your Venus, and they're going to square Saturn. So it's like, oh, he's interested, but he's still living with his wife and they're getting a divorce. You know, there's something kind of going on there. Watch for that, especially in August. I feel like it might materialize as you giving somebody an ultimatum and being like, listen, I'm not doing the back and forth. I can't do this. You know, like I need you to know what it is that you want. Saturn in the 7th is going to require that you have boundaries, that there's a sense of maturity, and that somebody is, if they're friends and they're saying that you're a friend, then you're actually friends. It's not friends with benefits. It's not friends who like each other, but you're in other relationships. Like you're going to have that. Otherwise, you're going to have to take a step back. That'll happen in August, you know? But know that it's very heavily supported as long as you're communicating and expressing with other people and going back and forth about how you communicate in relationships and what is and is not appropriate, right? Because there can be some inappropriate conversations or communications that people are having with you, but they're not actually really ready to be in a relationship. That's the other way that I can kind of look at this. But that is going to ring true because during your birthday, in a couple days' time, you're going to have Uranus conjunct your Venus and Saturn square. So I'd be surprised if you're not already having this experience. I kind of feel like it might already kind of start popping up. You'll have to let me know. If you have any questions, let me know. Hey, Mulani Tarot, let me know your PayPal name if you made a donation, just so we can make sure that we get you, what your PayPal name will come up as so I can check it. I am looking through everybody now. Milani series, let's see. Did you make this payment today? You're welcome. Do consider maybe getting a solar return reading. I mean, whether it's with me or somebody else, I do offer that if you want, like for like an hour session. You could probably talk briefly for a half hour too. Just talk about what's going to happen for the year. So yeah, let me put your info in. I'm going to see if you're coming up. Can you give me the email that it's associated with? You didn't send it via Super Chat because it's not coming up in my PayPal, or if you want to send me proof of payment, I do not have you. So I would say confirm and make sure that your donation went through, because I don't have you. I just put you in, I put that exact name in my PayPal and it's not coming up. And I'm looking at all the payments that came in. I don't have anything from you. And make sure it's not under a different name, maybe. Sing, Kayla, Lynn, Amy, Aileen, Michelle. And if you have the time that you sent it, you said the beginning of the show, when the show started. So the show started at 7 o'clock. So I do not have your name around the time that the show started. I'll go ahead and pin my email. So what you can do is just email me the proof of payment through PayPal. You should get like a PayPal number, and it'll also say that you sent the money over. Just take a screenshot of that, email it to me, and I can either issue you a refund or I can do the reading for you via audio, but I don't have it on my end. I don't know why. It's not in here. Yeah, request the refund and I will send it to you for sure. I'm sorry, I don't know how that happened. Sometimes I know, depending on where you're watching, for some countries, for whatever reason, I can't, like I won't get the payment. I've noticed that. But thank you guys so much for watching, for joining, for getting your readings. I appreciate your patience. If you waited for a long time to get a reading, that's one of the reasons why it's the benefit of joining my memberships. If you join my level 3, it's about the same price of getting a reading anyway. So you're going to be guaranteed whenever I do a live reading once a month, you're going to be one of the first few people who I'm going to answer a question for. So if you don't want to wait 2 hours or whatever for me to read your question, consider joining memberships. You're going to be at the top of my list. I'm going to make sure that I answer you as quick as possible. Thank you guys for watching, for joining, for liking, sharing, subscribing, commenting, giving me a thumbs up. I will see all of you guys tomorrow for the astro weather, and I'll see you next week for tarot. Take care.